Test 1, 2.
Good evening, colleagues, members of the community, ladies and gentlemen, and persons coming tonight to see the Santa Monica Malibu Board of Education's regularly scheduled meeting. We called this meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. this afternoon, and we have been in closed session. We are coming out of closed session now so that we can hear from some very wonderful young people in the room who we see, and then we will be making our way back into closed session for a short period of time. Let it show that all members of the Board of Education are here this evening, save our Vice President, John Keene, who is away in Rwanda, Africa, working on his next film project, and we wish him well and look forward to his return in 17 days. Dr. Samaraj Pal, do you think maybe the children would join with you in the Pledge of Allegiance? We'd love to have you lead us, please.
Smash Corwin, would you please help us and ask everyone to please rise? Please face the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for leading us in tonight's pledge. Colleagues, we have before us the approval of our agenda for the evening. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Ms. Lieberman. This is just to approve the agenda, not consent.
Did the ed specs item, do we have to get pulled off the, it doesn't show on that agenda?
So it's been pulled, correct, Sarah? All right. Thank you for noting that, Ralph. Thank you, Mr. Mitcher. So with that notation, all those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye. And so that's a unanimous, Sarah. And then that brings us to the approval of our minutes. We have one set of minutes to look at this evening, and that's for March 21st. Myself, Mr. Metcher, and Mr. De La Torre were all not in attendance. Is there a motion to approve those? Moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Ms. Leon Vasquez. Any changes or discussion? All right. So this is a roll call vote. We can, but I think folks like to. You're absolutely right, Craig. Okay, if there are no objections, we will postpone. All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Drardi, that now brings us to our Board of Education commendations and recognitions, the Week of the Young Child celebration.
I would like to invite Dr. Susan Powell to come introduce the ceremony.
Thank you. Superintendent Drardi, board members, and guests, it is a pleasure to be with you this evening, especially as we recognize the upcoming week of April 8th as the Week of the Young Child. The purpose of the Week of the Young Child is to focus public attention on the needs of young children and their families, and to recognize the early childhood programs and services that meet those needs. The National Association for the Education of Young Children first established this week in 1971, recognizing that the early childhood years lay the foundation for children's success in school and later life. The Week of the Young Child is a time to plan how we, as citizens of a community, a state, and a nation, will better meet the needs of all young children and their families. Today we know, now more than ever before, about the importance of children's earliest years in shaping their learning and development. The Week of the Young Child is a time to recognize that children's opportunities are our responsibilities, and to recommit ourselves to ensuring that each and every childhood experience has the type of early environment at home, at childcare, at school, and in the community that will promote their learning. It is with the intent and the district's focus of social justice education that I am excited to introduce, or reintroduce for some of you, Graciela Barba Castro, who is a former colleague of mine at Will Rogers and a current teacher in Core 1 at SMASH, the Santa Monica Alternative Schoolhouse, and her amazing students, who are going to share a song with us, as well as how they use mindfulness in their daily school lives. I would like to thank Graciela, her students, and their families for being here to do this evening. Graciela?
Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you. So we have the youngest of
the SMASH student community here. These are 5 and 6-year-old kindergartners, which in our multi-age configuration we call the partners. So I now invite the partners to share their song and dance, Listen to the Water. So partners, come on up. So, partners, if you'll take 3 steps back, I'm now going to invite you to share a little bit about mindfulness and how we use mindfulness at school. Will you sit? Do you want to sit crisscross applesauce? Go ahead and take a seat. So, who will tell us what is mindfulness? Can I want to come up?
Mindfulness is when you notice your breathing, you notice your body is calm, and you notice your feelings.
how does mindfulness help you at school or outside of school? May, come on up. How does mindfulness help you at school or at home? How do you use mindfulness?
When you notice your breathing and you notice your breath.
Edie, do you want to come up and share? Come on up.
Mindfulness is something that when you notice you're crying and stop, or when you notice you hurt yourself and try to use your mindfulness.
And Kian, come on up.
When you notice you're mad or angry, you can use mindfulness.
And Eleonora.
Mindfulness helps me when I'm angry and sad. It helps me take deep breaths.
And Lily, come on up.
It's when you should not be in a bad mood. You should be in a good mood. It just helps you be how you are. If excited, mad, sad, happy. I mean, not happy because you're already mindfulness. That's how you do it.
Oh, so you can be how you are, and you can notice that.
Yes.
Okay. And thank you. Have a seat.
It's the end.
And does it help you when you're feeling excited? Yeah. So now I have some questions for you. Answer together. Who can learn mindfulness? Everyone. Can teachers learn mindfulness? Yes. Where's Naja? So Naja and I are taking an online mindfulness class, thanks to the district. Can grandparents learn mindfulness? Okay. Can children learn mindfulness? Yes, you already saw that. What about babies? Can babies learn mindfulness? You won't believe this. Okay, we actually have a story about a baby who learned mindfulness. Meron, want to come on up? Okay. It's unbelievable. So, you taught a baby mindfulness? Who did you teach?
My baby brother.
How old is your baby brother?
0.
Years old? How many months? 5 months?
5 months.
5 months, 0 years. And tell us how you taught him mindfulness. What was your baby brother doing? Was he happy or was he crying when you taught him mindfulness?
He was crying.
He was crying. And what did you say to him?
I said, breathe in and breathe out.
How many times did you say that? One time or many times?
Many times.
And what did your baby brother do?
He got more happy.
Did it calm him down?
Yes.
And what about the crying?
It made him stop crying.
Made him stop crying. So, fantastic. Would you like to try a mindfulness practice with us that we learned in class? Yes? All right. So, Nevo, will you come up and teach?
Raise your hand. Put your other finger on the outside of your thumb like this.
And now go up. And while you're going up, breathe in. And then go down. And while you're going down, breathe out. Then do that on all of your fingers until the outside of the pinky. Notice how your body feels.
What should we do if our body feels calm? Stop. What if our body doesn't feel calm? What can we do?
You could do it again.
Try again. Thank you. That is a moment of mindfulness to share with you. Thank you again for this opportunity to show how mindfulness serves our children in our schools, and that we are able to carry that into our homes, and that it's a practice that benefits the youngest and the oldest members of our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Samaj Powell.
We'd just like to once again thank Smash Core 1 and Graciela and the children and their parents for being here this evening. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, we are going to make our way back to closed session. I'd like to hold us to no more than 30 minutes, and then we can make our way back out. So we are making our way back to closed session. But we have to go. This will keep a little time on us to pressure us to get done. Public, and particularly to our teachers and our district staff who endured our coming out of closed and then going back into closed session. And on behalf of all of us here on the dais, we want to thank you for your patience with us as we had to make our way back into closed session for a short period of time. So we did return to closed session at 6:05 p.m. and Sarah has it recorded as we've now returned. I would like to report out 3 items from closed session before we continue with our approved agenda for the evening, and I'll read those 3 decisions by the Board of Education. The first is DN 1018-18/19, which is a final settlement agreement. Kindly note the summary of the settlement. The district agrees to reimburse parents in the amount of $50,000 for students' educational expenses for the 2018-29 regular school year. The district shall conduct observations of the student at an out-of-district school April, May, or June 2019. The district shall hold an IEP meeting for student no later than June 7, 2019 to determine placement and services for the 2019-2020 regular school year. The district agrees to pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees in the maximum amount of $12,500. The motion was made by Mr. Foster, seconded by Ms. Leon Vasquez. The vote was a 6 yes, 0 no's. We had one member absent for this vote. That's Vice President John Keane. The second item to report out is DN 1016-18/19. This is also a final agreement. Kindly note that the summary of the settlement is as follows. 1. The district agrees to make available 75 hours of after-school one-to-one tutoring by district-supplied credentialed teacher at district school location or public library in the city of Santa Monica for the approximated amount of $3,412. 2, the district agrees to make available 30 minutes a week of counseling services during the student's school day at the Smash/Muir campus through the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Third, the district shall conduct additional evaluation for purposes of determining whether student qualifies for special education and related services. Lastly, the district agrees to pay reasonable and compensable attorney fees in the maximum amount of $7,500. The motion was made by Mr. De La Torre, seconded by Ms. Lieberman. That was a vote of 5 yes with 0 no's, 1 absent member. Again, that's Vice President John Keane. The last item to report out of closed session this evening is DN 1017-18/19. This also is a final settlement agreement. Kindly note that the summary of that settlement is as follows. 1, the district agrees to assess students in the following areas, academic achievement, health, speech and language, including assistive technology /AAC and occupational therapy. 2, the district agrees to fund an independent educational evaluation in the area of psychoeducation for an approximate amount of $5,000. The district shall pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees not to exceed $6,000. The motion was made by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. De La Torre. There were 5 yes votes, 0 no votes. We had 2 members absent at the time that the vote was taken. That was Mr. Keane, Vice President John Keane, and member Mr. Ralph Metcher. That concludes the items to be reported out of closed session this evening. And that brings us to our second recognition commendation for the evening, and that's our Adult Ed Week celebration. Dr. Drotti?
Dr. Devon Smith will do the honor.
Thank you. He's the principal of that facility in his 4th year now. The Adult Ed Center serves adult students 18 to 100, and these are primarily working adults who serve our community. And right now, I'd like Mr. Anthony Fuller to come up.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit what we're doing over there. There's no actors involved in the making of this PowerPoint. They're all actual students, including Olga Saucedo, who's pictured there with me. She was a student of the adult education program and a graduate, and also a parent in our district. We have embarked on quite a new journey in our partnership with the college. With the funding changes through the state of California, we certainly hope that this will go on ad infinitum. Funding is on the minds of everybody these days, but it has served to make our program a lot more systemic than it used to be, but it also has helped us identify ways in which we need to improve as an adult school. One of the main things is we're attached to the college. The college is a rather large entity. We're a rather small entity, but being attached to the college has made us re-examine the way we're offering our programs, and what's led to is discussions that we're going into next year about a way to further systematize the AEC. We want our students at the AEC to go through a series of our own pathway, if you will, to link up to the non-credit pathway that we share with SMC. So our mission statement, our student learning outcomes, those have changed a little bit as we have expanded in our objectives with our grant, the consortium grant, although I shouldn't call it a grant anymore. It's called the Adult Ed. I'm sorry, I forget the name of it. But they change the name every year, and it's not actually a grant. It will be the ongoing funding for us. But our SLOs are something that we didn't have as an adult school before. There's many things that we realized that we needed to have to sort of prepare our students for more education if they choose, or better jobs. So students demonstrating digital literacy, students achieving their educational or employment goals. We are using surveys in the first and second semesters, or terms, I guess we call them. Students advocate for themselves and their families by navigating community resources, and students know their rights, duties, responsibilities of civic engagement. One of the requirements of our WIOA grant is something called EL Civics, which we have been rolling out over the last couple of years, and it speaks directly to the responsibilities of civic engagement. It's opened up a whole new set of challenges for us, but ones that we are embracing because, of course, I'll get to it in a later slide, but we don't just offer adult basic education and ESL, we also offer citizenship. So there's a lot of things on order there. Our 2018-2019 data, we had about 394 students, not all on campus at any given time, I can assure you. I won't go through all the numbers. You can see them yourself. We're slightly more female. We do have some people that are not employed. These are mostly people from our local community, although it should be shared that many of the students who attend our school at night are people who work in our community during the day and live here. Night school makes sense for them. It's the hours that they can make. These are the programs that we offer at the Adult Education Center. We have the high school equivalency exam, high school equivalency class, high school diploma class, adult basic education class, ESL, variety of levels of ESL, and actually that's our, if I could call it our closest link and the one program that we are really working with SMC to firm up. ESL is something we both share. They share ESL, we share ESL. That's the thing that we started with the grant to sort of make our two institutions play well with each other, if you will, and citizenship. But anybody looking at those 5 programs could easily say that they should make sense within one another. And that's something that we have not done yet as well as we would like. So we want to be able to create a situation where somebody comes in and needs that diploma, we get it. They want to finish their adult basic education in some other class, we take care of it. They need more ESL classes, whether it be advanced intermediate, low beginning, low advanced, and then maybe they need citizenship. We have people taking their citizenship test, I believe, next week, and we had a new citizen Tuesday, an Irish citizen. Program highlights. We are recently WASC accredited. That seemed like something we needed to do, and we came through. We are a Pearson VUE testing center. Up until construction had finished our media center, we had limited computer terminals to do our GED testing. I think we were down to about 8 terminals. With our new media center, of course, we can now expand our offerings. We can handle a lot more people taking the GED test than we did before. And our SMRC, or Santa Monica Regional Consortium Working Group, is what we're working on to realize the SMC non-credit pathways. The idea is, still working on this, we're getting our students ready to go off to SMC to pursue non-credit pathways. What that means is not necessarily for a degree. A lot of times it's to increase their employment chances, increase their employment opportunities, their own marketability. It could be going on to credit education. That's not exclusive of that. But non-credit is, in the initial focus, for adult betterment, if you will, adult education to access better occupations, better pay, and then possibly, if they want to, increase their follow on their education at a 4-year institution. Clearly, our citizenship class. If you want to learn U.S. history, come to my citizenship class. Excuse me. So these are our ESL and citizenship numbers, and our basic education, or ABE and ASE numbers. 70% of our ABE and adult secondary education students enroll to continue some form of education. They want to continue. They come to us to go on to SMC. They're aware of the resource. In the past, in the many years that I've been in Olympic, students who are arriving at Olympic late and are very credit deficient and unable to catch up are absolutely lucky to be able to walk over from our main office, enroll at adult school, and either take classes while they're enrolled at Olympic, as many Samuel High students do currently, as well as Olympic students, or to move over to adult school to finish their diploma. So this may be funny because we're trying to flow a video here, but I realize the video might be askew. A recent grad. Whoops. That was me, I think. Ah, there we go. And all recipients of the adult high school diploma are offered the opportunity to walk the stage at the Olympic graduation, along with the Olympic graduates. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Drati, that now brings us to our study session for the evening, which is our next generation science standards and our implementation update.
Thank you.
Dr. Mora, I didn't mean to step on your toes there.
No,
I
no,
just
you're
saw
good.
Dr. Mora eager to jump up also.
Just to, just before Dr. Morris speaks, we thought this was important to bring this to your attention, but there's a massive shift in the design and delivery of science education in the whole state of California. It's as big as what we experienced with the Common Core. And a lot of decisions are going to come our way soon, so our teachers have been working very hard through this system with UCLA for several years. And we're proud to present some of this information to you. But the reason why this is coming before you is we can't get so far ahead that you're not aware of what's happening, because at some point we got to make some decisions about science.
So thank you very much. Good evening, board members, President Dr. Drati, cabinet, and guests. It's an honor for me to be able to introduce our Director for Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Irene Gonzalez Castillo, and our teachers that will be showcasing the work. I want to thank them for everything that they've done to get us to this point, and I want to go ahead and invite Dr. Gonzalez Castillo to come up and introduce the team and really frame the work. This has been invaluable, and her leadership and the leadership of the team has really propelled us forward, so thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education members, Dr. Drati and cabinet and guests. As Dr. Morris shared, we are so proud to have our teaching team here this evening with you. We have so much to share. We will try to stay within our 45 minutes. Mariana O'Brien is here with me as well for this first part of the session, and we are going to kind of go back and forth. We have a number of people joining us this evening. So the purpose of today is to provide an update to the Board of Education around our SMUSD NGSS, it's a lot there, implementation plan. Today we're going to focus on our kindergarten through middle school. We're going to come back May 16th to give you an update on high school implementation. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a background first before we share some of the great work happening in the district. The NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, were adopted by the state of California in 2013. And as Dr. Drati shared, it's a huge game changer for us in our state, but also across our nation. After we adopted the standards, then we also received from the state of California a framework, which really kind of guides us in what the instruction looks like and should look like in our schools. And that was in 2016. As far as how that framework was put together, it involved educators, scientists, people from different industries. A lot of people who have expertise came to the table to take a look at what are our students going to need to be future ready in STEM fields and the area of science, and just for thinking about critical thinking, problem solving, all those skills that are necessary, regardless of what industry or profession students pursue in the future. In 2018, November, a few months ago, the state of California adopted a number of programs that they considered to be aligned with this new framework. So we're going to talk a little bit about that this evening. And the California science test, that is something that has been piloted the past couple of years. It went through field test, and this year it became operational in grades 5, 8, and once in high school. And this year we administered that at 11th grade. So this next slide here, just to kind of share with you briefly our implementation plan. I've included this in our Friday memo, and so hopefully you've seen this before. But when you look at this slide, if you see three, we have a lot of threes up there. But the reason why I have 3 years there is because although we have been working on developing awareness over the past few years, as you remember, we had I was working with elementary, and Dr. Edinburgh, when she was here, I was working with secondary. And it was an opportunity to kind of take a step back and think about coherence pre-K to 12. So we actually developed a 3-year plan beginning with 18-19. And you can see that in the plan. And also in the 3 grade spans, although we want to look at coherence across pre-K to 12, it's also important to understand the unique needs of each grade span. So you'll see that in the plan as well. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the 3 strategies that you will see in the plan, and we've actually taken a lot of steps in all of these areas this year. So the first is teacher leadership. We recognize that it was going to be critical to have teacher leaders across all grade levels participate in this process, and especially if we're looking at alignment and coherence in students' learning experiences from pre-K to 12. The second is that we wanted to focus on building capacity, professional development for teachers. And as Dr. Dradi shared, we've entered into a partnership this year with UCLA Science Project. They're working with preschool through 8th grade teachers, and also with CSUN working with our high school teachers, and we'll share more around their work in May. And the third part of our strategies for our implementation plan is really looking and exploring instructional materials that will support these instructional shifts that are necessary for NGSS. So with these 3 instructional shifts, I asked Ms. O'Brien to be here with me in case I miss anything, because she is an expert with this piece here. So when we look at the 3 instructional shifts that are in the framework, this was important for our team to really understand when we thought about developing this plan and moving forward. So the first, as you can see there in the green, is 3-dimensional. And the reason that's important is because when we look at our old science standards, 1998, it was basically a lot of facts that students need to know. A lot of the standards were written that way. Students need to know this. Not a lot of application necessarily. They were engineering, they were science practices, but that was necessarily integrated. With the 3-dimensional standards, we are looking at kind of the core, disciplinary core, which basically is our physical science, our life science, earth and space science. But we're also looking at practices that scientists really use every day, like asking questions, looking the tools that they use, right? Interpreting data. I'm looking at Mariana to see if she wants to add anything for that piece. And the third dimension is looking at cross-cutting concepts. These are concepts that cut across all science disciplines, like looking at patterns, change, stability, etc. Do you want to add anything to that before I go on to? No. Okay. So then,
you're doing great.
Okay, thank you. So the next shift is looking at coherence, and again, this has to do with looking at all the science disciplines working together, being interwoven, and building over time, because students will experience specific standards, but then they will actually spiral back to that and throughout their years in the district and throughout their years in science. And that's why it is so critical for us as teachers to know what is expected as far as performance expectations for students every year, because if the students don't have that experience, then they're not going to be prepared for that next step. As far as relevance, this is something that we're very excited about, especially with our work with project-based learning and social justice standards, because relevance is the part that connects us to what is important to students. How are we going to make this meaningful? How does it relate to our local community when we think about what we are presenting to students and what they're experiencing?
Yeah, I did want to add, as Dr. Dradi mentioned, that the shift in instruction is monumental. It is grounded in the seminal educational work you all know, How People Learn, and How People Learn Too. So that work required that instruction should include 3 main things: accessing prior knowledge, developing deep conceptual understanding, and metacognition. The next generation science standards are designed to be explicit so that happens, not as in the previous standards where it was, these are the facts, and it was implied that you would have them do a bunch of experiments. but it's very clear in the performance expectations because it includes all three of the dimensions in teaching.
What you mean by performance expectations is the assessment students will be engaging in?
Yeah, so before we actually called them like standards, but now they're called performance expectations, and the three dimensions are the cross-cutting concepts, as Irene mentioned, the disciplinary core idea, which is what we would think would be the standards from before, and then the science and engineering practices. So each performance expectation includes all three of those, and it's not so you just can't know that this chemical reaction. You have to see its application, and you have to use a practice, whether it's gathering data, looking at data, making a graph, interpreting data, to be considered proficient in that expectation. So we don't even use the word standards anymore because it's confusing. It's not a standard. It's a disciplinary core idea that should be woven through every grade, K through 12. Oh, wait, what? Oh, okay. So we had mentioned, we had talked about how I think about it is you can't do science, learn science unless you do it, because it would be like someone reading a bunch of cookbooks and thinking they could be a chef. You have to do it. No matter how many TV shows you watch, you have to do it and practice, and that's how you get better.
So this slide is actually a great place where we're going to transition to bringing our teachers up in a few minutes, because a focus point for our professional development this year was this first bullet, making sense of phenomena and designing solutions, and anchoring the work we're doing around a phenomena, something that is observable and the students can actually apply the three dimensions of the performance expectations. The other piece is learning through inquiry, and I know, Mariana, you were talking about the 5E model.
Yeah. So the 5E model was originally the 7E model proposed by Professor Bybee, and it is fundamental in the inquiry that we're trying to instill. It does take into account how people learn and the three core ideas from that work. So we as teachers need help getting more training in that, because it's not even understanding between all teachers, so we all can't move forward unless we have that understanding.
So what I'm going to do now is we're going to transition to some of our, we have a large team here today. Yes, please,
Can I just ask
Craig.
a quick question? Because I love what you're saying. I'm just trying to take it in because this is...
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's new, and it's wonderful. So you've been talking about the three things: accessing prior knowledge, deep exploration, medical, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Three things. Another fact, use it, application.
Oh, that was just...
Is this slide here, the looks like students slide, is that another way to say those three things? Is that the three things you're talking about?
Let me look at it.
Because I'm looking, I'd love here's the three things in writing, if you could just put it in the board packet next week or something.
Sure.
But I'm looking for because I love the three things, but I want, that ought to be tattooed
like
on everybody's forehead.
And three dimensions.
It's working.
Well, we can do that. We should.
Yeah, it is.
That would be a great thing for leadership.
Because the first bullet would be the disciplinary core ideas and the science and engineering practices, and the next one would be the disciplinary. I switched it. Disciplinary core ideas and the SEPs, but in the SEPs it's science and engineering practices. So that would be the second one, and the last one is actually a lot of people don't think that we should be teaching English and science, but we do, and quite often extensively. That lines really well with ELA Common Core and Math Common Core. So they are woven in there.
Part of practices too, I think.
So those of you that go to Dos Pueblos High School this Friday, take this packet with you and just match what you learn here with what you see there.
I would say that third bullet is definitely tied to the science engineering practices, because students are going to have to gather evidence and also share their findings. And they're going to have to do verbally and writing. So I believe scientists need to do that as well. So.
And could you, don't create anything new, but can you take the best little single sheet of paper,
Definitely.
whatever, with the three things and put it in our Friday packet? I would love it.
Yes. Thank you. I will do that. And I'm glad that you want to learn more about it.
I heard Member Foster endorse face tattoos this week.
So we are definitely immersed in this. And as I was sharing with Dr. Moore actually earlier this year, I said this has been It was such a great learning experience over this past year and working with this wonderful group of colleagues because all of the professional development we've been engaging together, we've all learned so much. I think it's the benefit of our students, of course. So with that, I have some members of our group they're going to bring up right now for early learning and elementary. And the first, we're going to go, if you guys can come on up and I'll introduce you, and then we'll have Christine start. Christine Manning is one of our early learning coach. We have two. And we also have Amy Oyanoki from McKinley, and she is our PS Science teacher. We have Laura Simon, who is from Will Rogers, and she is the STEM coach. And we have Katya Alexander, who is a second grade teacher at Rogers. So thank you so much. No, are you kidding me? Thank you, and I want to thank them for being here. We're going to start with the early learning.
Dr. Irene?
Yes.
Can I ask you,
Sure.
because you're all scientists and wonderful human beings, you're going to allow us one more interruption to your
Of
presentation because we have a 7 o'clock time-stamped item that will be so quick. You don't move. Just hang right there.
Okay, so we're going to wait for a second.
We
Okay.
have major action item number 11A, which is a public hearing on Measure R parcel tax 2019-20 on the annual plan. I would entertain a motion to open said hearing. Moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Lieberman. This is a roll call vote to open the hearing. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
I'm also a yes, Sarah. That's all members, 6 of us, voting yes. Oscar, do we have any public speakers for this item? We do not. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Mr. Metcher, seconded by Ms. Lieberman. This is also a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez? Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
And I'm also yes. That's 6-0 to close the hearing, and that concludes major action item 11A. Thank you for your patience.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. One of the major highlights from our leadership team has been that we've been able to really sit down and analyze teacher feedback from the NGSS trainings and then work with UCLA to tailor that to the needs of our teachers. An example of this is we got a lot of feedback from teachers that they wanted the trainings to be more grade specific. So then we communicate that to UCLA, and they were really responsive to that and made those adjustments for the next training. And we just got a lot of really positive teacher feedback from being able to work collaboratively with UCLA in that capacity. Sorry, and one of the wonderful things about this NGSS work is that the foundations for this inquiry-based learning and collaboration can be done in the preschool and the TK. So these students are observing phenomena, they're they're collecting data, and they're able to work with their colleagues to build theories, change those theories, and really just hone those, language development skills. So in these specific pictures, students at Edison were able to observe a natural phenomenon of a thunderstorm. So they were completely blown away. A lot of them hadn't heard thunder or seen lightning. So they were able to build their own theories on what they saw. And then the teacher, with lots of intent, was able to set up simulations of the water cycle. So in the first picture, you can see students are working with cotton balls and medicine droppers to simulate condensation in the water cycle. In the second picture, students collected rainwater, and you can see there's academic vocabulary displayed for students to study. And in the third picture, students were able to put liquid paint on a giant cloud to see what would happen if it was filled, too much with liquids, and make their observations and work collaboratively together. So through this work, they're able to engage on hands-on experiences and inquiry-based learning. This video that I'm about to show you is from the TK at McKinley Elementary, and this started with a bridge study where the students actually walked across a bridge on campus and started inquiring about what a bridge was, how to build a bridge, what to use to build a bridge. And you can kind of see in this conversation the productive struggle and the language development that's going on from the ideas that they've built on bridges. Yeah. So in that video, you can kind of just see those foundational skills of being able to voice an opinion, honor your peers' opinion, and build theories based on collaboration.
Hi. So what I'm going to talk about now is our strategy 2 of 3 is our professional learning. So this year we had an opportunity to work with the UCLA Science Project over 3 sessions. All the teachers went to a session before school started, and then we had one in the fall and one in February. And the focus of these sessions was for teachers to learn more about how to use anchoring phenomena throughout the unit to really, if they're building new science units according to the next generation science standards, to help ground those units with the phenomena, and then how to really build in the science and engineering practices and modeling. So those are sort of the topics of the professional learning opportunities with UCLA. And it was they were very hands-on professional developments where teachers were engaging in the process, so they were learning about it and then they were engaging in it. So it was really powerful. In the second session, they were building these storylines. So they were, so this is a 3rd grade unit up here that's being talked about. And so they went through a bunch of different activities and saw lots of different phenomena. And then it was the idea of how do you build that storyline so it makes sense for kids, so that they're, through this inquiry, through these learning of different things, they're building to a central concept where they can understand how that natural phenomena works. So, for example, this is forces and interactions. They're doing activities around tug of war, and they are doing stuff with ping pong and golf balls around pendulums, and working with magnets. And then they're also reading and responding and learning academic vocabulary and building the engagement through the activities to help them with learning more about these science concepts of forces and interactions.
So UCLA Science Project provided us with a list of all the materials that they used for their storylines. Our teachers saw them, thought they were really great, said if I had this, we could better incorporate these in our classrooms. So once they provided us a list, we purchased all of the materials that the UCLA Science Project recommended for their storylines. They are currently housed at Ed Services. They're slowly making their way out. So they are being packaged. Each school gets a bin per every 3 to 4 classrooms. So the larger schools, Roosevelt and Franklin, are getting 2 bins per every grade level, and the smaller schools are getting 1 bin per grade level, with enough for non-consumables to share with other classrooms, and then enough consumables for every classroom, which worked out to be about 36 classrooms worth of consumables. The idea being that next year and the year after, they can continue to do these storylines and use the non-consumable items. And the consumable items are things that they could very easily find at a dollar store or at the local supermarket, and can be purchased with any teacher grants that they may have on their own really easily. So as each grade level has had their most recent PD, we've been sending those out in that order so that it's timed fairly close as possible to when they had their PD session. So in this slide we have, based on some of our teacher feedback that we gave the UCLA Science Project, it was expressed that they would like to have more planning time with their own grade level team. So the last session was about modeling. So this is the 3rd grade team at McKinley. They'd already planned their life science unit, but they were talking about life cycles, but they decided to really focus on modeling and bringing scientific modeling to their students. So they chose the phenomenon of a newborn baby kangaroo, which I don't know if you've seen. It's called a pinky. If you've ever seen it, it looks very much like a worm. It does not look like a kangaroo at all. And then showed a little video of the pinky to their students, had them come up with the picture on the left is a list of their wonderings and anything that they noticed. After they came up with a list and did some talk in academic language around what they were seeing, they had the students draw, they did tell them it was a kangaroo. They showed them an adult kangaroo and had them try to develop a model based on how did they get from point A to point B. And then from there, they developed their models. And they talked about what's the difference between a drawing and a scientific model. And they determined they need to add labels and explanations. So in the bottom picture, the top picture shows a kid, very detailed kangaroo. And then the bottom picture shows that they've added labels and they've showed directional arrows and what step follows which step. With the bigger picture being not just the life cycle of a kangaroo or any life cycle, but why is the life cycle of the kangaroo. So then they brought in their ELA component and that they did a close read and had them read about Australia and the predators of Australia and why exactly do kangaroos give birth to babies that are so underdeveloped. And then that led them into a bigger picture of why do all living things have the babies that they do and why do they develop in the way they do, until we see a much more detailed model with more explanations. And then the next step that they actually, I was just in the classroom last week, and they've actually revised with other, like a different color marker so that they can track their thinking and see where their models have developed.
So, excuse me, after the UCLA days, we obviously all do science all the time, but what the teachers all worked on was how to make the units more phenomena-based and how to incorporate more of that modeling. But along with all of that is there's a lot of inquiry that's still going along. And with the inquiry, there's observation and data collection. So in the top picture there's first graders using aluminum pan, and they're trying to model how the sunlight reflects from the sun to the moon to the earth. And then there's fifth grade group doing stuff with chemical reactions, and then there's kindergartners that came up with questions about pill bugs, and they are doing their own investigations around. You can see there's a tray there, and there's like leaves and a paper towel, and so they would put the pill bug in the middle, and then they see where the pill bug goes, and they're learning how to collect data and making charts and doing tally marks to go along with their investigation. So all of this is part of the inquiry process, and for, again, as was mentioned earlier, for students to learn science, they need to do science. So this is really important that they do science at all different levels for all these different disciplinary core ideas, but really, and we want them to learn these disciplinary core ideas, but what NGSS does is really makes it explicit that the focus of your teaching is not just about that, but it's about all the different practices and concepts as well. So that these students, it's just as important that they're learning about data collection and observing than just pill bugs. So that's the point of NGSS, is to do all of those things. And then through the UCLA work, and in NGSS, one of the practice is about students learning how to model their thinking. There's a couple different types of ways students have been modeling. So they've been modeling after a specific lesson, but then they've also been making models of phenomena that they're working on throughout the entire unit. So Katja's going to talk about that.
So much like all of the other speakers have said, following the third professional development with UCLA, the second grade team talked about how did we want to roll out our life science unit. Ours is more about pollination of plants, and so working with the UCLA professional developer, we were able to find some videos and some books that we knew we were going to use within our unit. We started with this phenomena video, which is labeled by my student, pear plant. Initially, when I showed them the video, it's just a no sound video of a flower blooming, dying. Some of them die, some of them don't, and then a small bit of a pear beginning to develop. And so we watched that several times, and then I sent them back to their desks and said, please draw me what you saw. So Theo has done a beautiful job here. And then as you can see, I think he's shown several flowers, but only one died and only one turned into a pear. So we will revisit this phenomena video several times. In the meantime, we have also, because our goal is to get them to understand why do some plants turn into a fruit. And this is something that they see every day at the grocery store and even in our own gardens at our campus. As a matter of fact, following this video, we went out to lunch, came back, and we have a little lime tree right next to our classroom door. And some of them noticed, hey, that's a blossom. Wait, what's that? I think it's a lime. I don't know. So they were already building in that information. So we've gone back to revisit it a couple of times. We've also brought in a father who is a beekeeper, and he talked a great deal about pollination. And so they're starting to piece together, how did this flower turn into a lime? It's been really fantastic.
So students are doing that at all grade levels, where they're revisiting models and they're coming back, and this is a first grade one after a lesson about why you can see stars at night and not during the day. And after going through their experience, then they are, and their inquiry, then they're coming to their science notebooks and they're drawing models. And then what the models allow them to do alongside the inquiry is then they're able to speak and write a lot more, because they have something drawn and they're writing about their thinking through the visual. And then they add to their models that they're not just straight diagrams, it's not just labeled sun, it's labeled with what the phenomenon, what their thinking are. So they're learning how to explain their thinking through drawing the pictures, and then they're writing about it and speaking about it as well. So the work with UCLA really helped to reinforce the need for doing a lot of inquiry, but also how to get students to really be thinking about that inquiry, how to anchor it within these phenomena and driving questions, and then how to get students to work better at expressing their thinking and showing it on paper, and then through talking and writing about it as well. So our next steps for elementary is we're going to continue working with UCLA Science Project in year 2, do more professional development with them. And we're building a cadre of elementary science leaders so that all elementary schools feel supported and that there's confident science teachers within the different grade levels, and that we meet together so that we can share ideas and share resources and as we're going forward. And then we are working on getting instructional materials that align with NGSS. So that's part of what Amy was talking about with the UCLA storylines. That's sort of a beginning point. Different schools have done different things as sort of this stopgap between the old standards and the new standards. But now, moving forward, we're now in the phase where we'll be able to pilot instructional materials. So we're on the phase of we're choosing different materials, different companies that we're going to pilot, and then next year we'll be piloting those materials to see which ones we want to move forward with in the years to come.
Before we continue on with middle school, I just wanted to mark something. Just hopefully you've been able to see some of the changes in science instruction from what was to where we're going. And I think one thing we've heard from our teachers so far is that when we think about science, sometimes we think about scientific method, and first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to follow these steps. With NGSS, students are really making meaning throughout the entire process, through inquiry, through a phenomenon that interests them. The storyline we talked about, there are different learning experiences, and students are revising their understanding all the way through, and that's what the modeling is so important. So with that, I'm gonna introduce.
Before you go on to middle school, I know in elementary, and by the way, this is awesome. And being a science guy, you know, I'm intrigued by this. But at elementary school, I know there's always this competition for time with ELA, math. And I mean, how do we mitigate that, and how do we address that?
So how we're trying to view the science, so science doesn't get left off in elementary, is to make sure teachers understand that science is sort of the engaging inquiry, real-world application that gets the kids excited about learning, and then a lot of ELA and math can go along with that. So, and the engineering projects give it like the relevance that goes along with it too. And engineering is built into NGSS. So, for example, we just did a solar water heater project in first grade, and so they had done a lot of work on light and sun throughout their science in first grade, and then they were testing the materials, and they got temperature readings. So then they were figuring out which materials made the water heat up the most, and then they were graphing and analyzing that data. And then they've been, doing science reading around that and close reading. And then they actually developed scripts for commercials to sell their water heaters. And then they're practicing reading those with Reader's Theater script to help them build reading fluency in first grade. And they're writing those. So there's tons of ELA and tons of math that goes along with it. And that's an example of like a project-based learning sort of idea too that connects really well with the engineering concept. So they work really well together, and it does start with doing those science inquiry activities and having those build from student interest, so that then that carries them through, so then they're more motivated to doing the reading and writing. And I was in the first grade classroom when they were doing the writing, and they were filling pages with writing in first grade about their solar water heaters. So, and in first grade, that's a big deal. So it's really good to help reinforce all of those concepts.
Maybe we'll let them get through the whole if the board's okay.
No, if you want to ask questions about elementary and then go to middle school, that's fine too. Would you like to ask additional questions for elementary?
Just a couple. So, who at UCLA is we working with?
Yeah, so we're working with the UCLA Science Project, and there are 2 professional development providers that are working with us.
Department at UCLA.
It's actually through their educational department, and then they have a science project, they have a math project, they have different with CenterX.
It's great. I love it. It's wonderful, fantastic. Ironically, I'm not seeing in here, and I'm sure we're using it. Or it's how are we using technology? That our devices and all the kids are writing and they're doing all this wonderful stuff. What are we doing with that's web based or research or any of that?
So our upper elementary are one-to-one with their Chromebook, so they are using it to do research. They're using it to do coding projects. Hour of Code is big at many of the elementary schools. Franklin and McKinley both have 3D printers, so they are designing and 3D printing and then using that as part of their engineering process. Our early elementary have iPads. Our TKs are using iPads and Seesaw to share their thinking and collaborate with as a group. So we are using our technology component on almost a consistent basis.
Well, I think I don't know. Over time, maybe we can see some of that. I think we're interested just in seeing how how that's all working together, since that's one of our our efforts. Although I don't have any problem with kids using their hands to do things. And I think it's great. I think you've answered the questions about and the I guess the issues of making sure it's integrated in and that it's not looked as a separate thing that we're doing. And so it strikes me you see that the kids are writing, that they might be doing some math, and hopefully that's helping teachers understand what kids our students are abilities are and that helps them in how other things that are going on, in the learning for the children. So I think it's it's real powerful in many ways to create chemists and the like, and powerful in helping us give our kids the skills that they need to be successful.
You talk about instructional materials. It seems like, the standards are new, but more importantly, you're working sort of backwards from the creation of relevance and hand-on experience to then the consumption of the factual material, if you will. The textbooks historically have had this little thing in the circle in the corner that nobody ever does because it's too much work, and then we just go back to the memorizing the facts that are in the book. Is that going to change in the new materials that we're using? Are the new materials that you're going to adopt going to be supportive of a much more hands-on, experiential entry into the learning of science?
And that's what we're looking at right now. And I know that when our middle school team comes up, they can also talk about some of the materials they're piloting or looking at right now, because that's the lens we're using. Because if you're thinking about what is relevant and meaningful, we don't want to just have cookie cutter. Here's a phenomenon. It's in the book. It's what we use. So we really want to be thoughtful about what we purchase. And in elementary, we've been talking about that as well, is do we want to purchase a program like that? Or do we want to continue to develop storylines with like the one we've shared with UCLA? Instead of just, but it is also, of course, think about materials and support and staffing as far as all of those pieces. But yes, we're looking at that through that lens.
Thank you, Craig. We're going to hear from Maria, then we're going to get back to the report.
Craig kind of answered the question. Asked the question that I was kind of going for. The only other thing is, this always sounds so great, and I think at one point we had talked about doing some walkthroughs with you all. That would be great to kind of see how it all plays out in your classrooms. I think that would be great for us to kind of see it playing out, especially where it's yes, we have a cohort in PBL, but I think we've been doing that. I remember even my kids doing some of that already. You know, my kids went through Rogers, you know, and Rogers was kind of like the tester in a lot of this thing because it was one of the first STEM elementary. So I know that they were already doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were able to observe some of it this summer. Remember, you know, that's one of the reasons why when we developed our Science Language Academy for English learners last summer, we're going to do it again this year. It was all based in science, and that was so. I mean, the engaging content, and again, integrating reading, writing, math, all of it, but having that engaging content. So, we'll definitely arrange that visit.
You can just kind of send us, I guess, times, or possibly some of us in the summer can go out and visit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that would be great to see it in
great.
action.
Thank you. Dr. Irene, we have about 15 minutes
Okay,
left.
perfect. We'll go ahead and continue on middle school. So come on up. We have Steph Schwartz from John Adams Middle School and Mariana O'Brien from Lincoln Middle School, and they are part of our leadership team, and they've been fantastic to work with as well. Before we bring them up to share, just briefly, this image here. I wasn't sure if I should bring this today. I don't want to confuse anyone, but I wanted to go and just share it because when you look at that arrow where it says every science, every year, 3-year model in middle school, the reason I wanted to share that was because when you look at the Next Generation Science Standards framework, there are specific performance expectations for students. And whether you teach them discipline specific, one grade level is focused on biology or science, and they go on to life, to the other sciences, physical science, et cetera. You can do that, but the other model that we have really, we're really in favor of and actually adopted a couple years ago now is the preferred integrative model, where all students get all standards in it and they're integrated. And the reason why we selected that, and I know that Mariana was part of that discussion a few years ago, was because when you look at the rationale, there was a science panel that was put together at the state level, again made up of all these different experts, including educators and scientists, et cetera, and they looked at research around 10 countries who were the most successful in science innovation, and of those 10 countries, this is the way that they approached science instruction, was integrated and not in isolation. And what you'll hear about when we talk with high school is this idea of a 3-course model in high school, because of those 10 countries, 7 of those continue in this integrated approach in high school. So we're going to talk about that the next time we're together. So I'm going to go ahead and ask, I think Steph, you're going to start us off? Great.
All right, so we also worked with the UCLA Science Project, and again, in order to really benefit from this professional learning, we actually went through several adult learning experiences. And so the very first slide, if you can play this video, this is the video that we actually got to see, and then I'll explain what we did with it. This is called The Drop of Doom. Mm-hmm. Sure is. They're going up, 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 yeah. Mm-hmm. So we watched that video several times, and then the purpose of watching that video is to make observations about what you're noticing, and as they're falling, you can see that various parts of their clothing are being affected by gravity differently and so on. The ultimate experience afterwards has to do with the braking, and spoiler alert, there are magnets involved. And so what we as adult learners were going through here is trying to figure out which braking system would, not kill your customers if you were on this ride. So if we go to the next slide, whoops, I went too fast. And so here are two of our adult learners participating exactly in this learning experience, which you can then apply in the classroom. So the whole idea of beginning with a phenomenon is something that we've all embraced at all levels. So just as an example, the recent body systems unit that I just finished teaching, we actually began with a roller coaster example because the question is, why does my heart beat faster when I am scared? And they had some very engaging video clips. The kids immediately want to know if we're all going to Magic Mountain tomorrow. Unfortunately, no. But we did begin the body systems unit with that, and then eventually the assessment comes full circle, and I actually brought this with me, but in the interest of time, maybe we'll skip that. But their final questions on this have to do with how are all the body systems involved in the fight or flight mechanism. And so it's a way of bringing it all together that, again, was motivated specifically by this anchoring phenomenon, which had to do with riding on a roller coaster. Second example, climate change. Here was, again, something that we started off with something very motivational, very striking. We talked about the melting of glaciers. We also talked about the bleaching of the coral reefs. And we were talking about the indisputable evidence that exists for climate change. And then all of our students in the 6th grade at John Adams were asked to make a pledge of 5 things that they could do to reduce their carbon footprint. And so they were able to do research and come up with 5 things that they, even as young citizens, could do to reduce their carbon footprint. I don't know. I was just thinking in the interest of time, but I did bring them with me. They're very cute. And so as long as you promise to give them back, we can look at them if you would like. So this process of always beginning with the interesting phenomenon and then the explanation is something that we are now implementing on a regular basis at all levels. Example, today, for example, I didn't bring any pictures with me, but today we smashed up strawberries to extract DNA, so I'm probably wearing some of that right now. Because nothing is more motivating than being able to pull the slimy stuff straight out of the strawberries. And so I had 6th graders smashing up strawberries all day. And then we're going to use this as the kickoff for our genetics unit, and that's where we're headed next. Okay. All right. Come on.
This is the instructional shifts that are happening, and I know that, Mr. Foster, you're worried about us sliding back into what we would do in the past. But if these instructional shifts are happening, that will not be possible. The change from science for most students is actually changing to science for all. In the middle school level in particular, they are decreasing the amount of content so we can have a lot more depth rather than breadth. We're going to, rather than learning about, this is how the periodic table works, we actually are having kids figure out how it works. And that process is not how it used to be. It's not, these are the 4 kinds of chemical reactions. It's not how it's going to be. Before, teachers would provide information to all the students, here's the explanation to what you just saw, this discrepant event. We're actually having kids figure it out. So if NGSS is implemented properly, there should not be sliding back, because if we do, we're not implementing it properly. So this here is just an example of how we can use phenomenon. We started off at the very beginning of the year asking students to, what do you notice about this? These are called the slithering stones in the Mojave Desert. It's a way to show them how scientific inquiry actually happens. It's not linear, as mentioned earlier. Here's an example of these rocks that move in the Mojave Desert with no steps around them, some weigh as much as 500 pounds, and asking kids to think about, what do you notice about that? How do you think it could happen? Is a way to engage them. And with this particular phenomenon, we had students listen to an NPR article that had the scientist who initially claimed it was from the wind and got her PhD on it, realized that it actually wasn't, and come back and say, I have to see this myself, when they put some, I'm not going to tell you because you have to go look at it yourself. It's really good. It was a great way for students to see how science happens, and it was just a little 3-minute article. Here is what science students can use to understand how science really works. This is a great website that is used from, probably middle elementary up until high school because they have different kinds of formats of it. But it shows them that science happens all different ways. It's not linear. And if you think it is, then you're not really doing it. You need more practice. And we need to help you practice some more. Here's the phenomenon that we use for our most recent unit. And again, you ask students what you notice about this picture, what do you wonder about this picture, and what does it remind you of? And I want to take you through just a sequence so you can see how if this phenomena is happening, this instruction with phenomena is happening, then we're not giving them the answers. We're not saying this is how it happens. We're having them figure out. We guide them with skilled questioning and gathering of resources. So we end up with here, like this video here is from the Shella-Binks asteroid, I think in 2013. And this is an example of having kids generate ideas to help answer a question. And the question that we had was this one right here. What are the effects of an asteroid collision and how can we prevent one in the future? So that essential question with additional phenomena helps us drive instruction and learning and understanding. We don't say, this is how it happens. This is how the dinosaurs died. This is how we say, this is the evidence. What do you think? There's not a better explanation right now, so this is what we believe, and helping them to do that. I'm going quickly because I know in the interest of time, but you have these slides so you can look at them. And here we are.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
All right. So we also attended the instructional materials fair. We also had Irene brought back several of the publishers who came and presented to us. And at this particular moment, all of the middle school teachers are busy looking at materials. So a few of us have actually already taught a full unit using the materials as we can. We have been given access to their online materials, and by combining that with printed out materials that they've allowed us to photocopy already because they know that we're thinking about possibly piloting their programs, we've introduced our students to these. And so we're looking at them very carefully. We're noticing where we can use the one-to-one technology. Our 7th graders now have Chromebooks. 6th graders don't have them yet. But we're looking at them very specifically with that lens in mind, because right now all the publishers are putting out both print materials and online materials. And so we are examining it specifically with what would work best for all of our students. So by the fall, we should be ready to recommend 2 publishers that we want to look at for a pilot. One more slide. And as far as the assessment goes, we've already begun to put some of these shifts and changes into place, because even though we don't have the updated materials yet, we are already preparing our students for the CAS test. And so some of the assessments that we just recently gave were based on those materials that they will be using in the future to take the test in 8th grade. Also, our 8th graders at John Adams are experimenting with a standards-based grading system where every assignment is graded on a 1 to 4 rubric. We have somebody who has already developed a way to use a spreadsheet to keep track of these grades. And so we're very interested in, if a publisher is putting out materials, if it can be lined up with Illuminate, because that way their assessment can be filtered in smoothly. And so those are some of the things that we're addressing right now.
That concludes our presentation. Our next part will be May 16th with the high school, but I just wanted to see if we had any questions for our 2 middle school representatives while they're here.
Are you getting a chance to collaborate with other disciplines? I can see how some of these projects can lend itself to math and ELA and other subject areas.
Oh, that is absolutely always our dream, to be able to work with all of the other disciplines. So,
We had an opportunity to do project-based learning when we had students send experiments to the International Space Station on 4 different missions, and that was a dream come true because we blocked English with science, and that's a whole different story, but it was remarkable. We do have to fight now, though, to get that kind of collaboration going because the structure is not in place for it to happen seamlessly. It's true. That structure of a science class or English class and then a science class for a group of students, it was a game changer. And so now, since we just have the regular, 6 periods, is we have to find our time to make it work. And it's a challenge because you can't have new collaboration if you still have an old system. And I wanted to address the point about the instructional content. There's, I think, 29 different publishers that were providing materials. There is a tool called the TIME tool. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's to assess the NGSS-ness of something, and it needs to meet these particular requirements, such as providing support for English learners, being culturally relevant to California, and having points in instruction where you can assess understanding of this particular lesson. And if students didn't get this idea from this lesson, then you need to go back and help those kids that didn't and move the other kids forward. And that is, I think, really powerful to ensure that all kids get it, not just most kids.
Ralph.
Well, it certainly, you prove the point that it takes scientists to do things in a certain way, and you're really modeling what you want the kids to learn how to do, so that's great. How does this align with John Adams as a science magnet?
That's an excellent question. I will let my colleagues
So at the present time, the way that the magnet works is with experiences that students can sign up for after school and also field trips. And there's also a connection to the classroom as well. So the magnet provides funding for these after school seminars that students sign up for. All of our seminars are these phenomenon-based kind of experiences as well. And of course, the field trips that are aligned with each grade level are the ultimate. You're going out in the field. My colleagues just returned from Joshua Tree, and so they were out there literally experiencing the world. I know that a few weeks ago we had a group on a seminar out orienteering, and so they were really putting all of that into place as well. We start them off in 6th grade at Catalina. And so the kids that go on the Catalina trip are spending their time real-world experience science around them. Plus, if you've never been snorkeling with a bunch of 6th graders, that will change your life as well. Because the students have a chance to really experience science in the field, which is unfortunately one of those things that you can't always bring into the classroom. And so that is the most direct connection, is with the extra experiences. All of the students have access to those, and so that is the way that we're integrating that.
Thank you. Craig, do you have a question? Craig.
Two things. Simple one is I assume that part of this cadre is in Malibu as well. You've got teachers from Malibu Elementary and middle schools who are embarked on the same.
Middle school, yeah. And the image you saw was that day there was a representative from Malibu, and that was Ray Abadian. He's from JAMS, and so we do try to work together, even though it is challenging when you're that far away. But
Understood.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, so we have 3 different ways we're pushing forward with evolving or improving or bolstering education. One of which is with specific project-based learning, interest-based learning environments, but we're also talking about expanding the practices of the everyday classrooms and creating more support, more scaffolding for the teachers, yada, yada. The bulk of what we're talking about tonight is that last piece, the class, changing the experience of the everyday classroom, right? And I just, it's more of a comment than a question. I think that is so important, and so, I mean, the engaging way you talk about science and how engaged we were, I have to say, is a contrast for how I think it's taught in all around the country in terms of sucking the joy and the creative thinking and the joy of learning and the experimenting. And so I just couldn't be happier that we're doing this, and I applaud you guys for doing
And
it.
actually, these are national standards, so it's not just like.
Thank you, Craig. Oscar?
I just want to thank you all very much for this presentation and all the great work that you all are doing. One of the things that I see in the student work is that they have a strong interest, and I've heard it many times when the students come and speak. They're talking about environmental issues that that affect their future, and as they should. And that's going to be a big topic moving forward. I mean, we're the Green New Deal, climate change, global warming. I mean, these are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So there's a lot. This is going to be a big issue.
It is.
And I'm thinking whatever we can do at the local level, to get young people interested, just in their own environment. For example, I went to a conference about a week ago to study water. Like, where does water come from? Like, we turn on the water faucet, we really don't know where it comes from. Well, I know we have Santa Monica's independent. We have you drive over there on Bundy, and I think what's that, Bundy and like Wilshire Boulevard. But getting the tour, for example, of that water plant. How we deal with the runoff. And all that in the Santa Monica Bay. There's just a whole lot. That I think are. Visiting Curuvunga Springs, which I don't know if you all have been to, right next to University High School. There's that's the myth of where the story of how Santa Monica got its name. Through the springs, natural springs that emanate from the ground on the campus at University High School. There's just a lot in the local area. These small field trips, that where just to pique our students' interest might be a great resource for us.
Right, and in the past, I've been with Santa Monica District, Malibu District for 28 years. And so we've taken those field trips, and it is amazing what we have right here in our own backyard. And because of the fact that we've been able to go to the pier and the aquarium and the Smurf where they are, where they're processing the water, that really brings it home to the students. And one of the videos at the end, in the Chasing Coral video, where they were talking about the bleaching of the coral, they talk about all of the countries that have made commitments and all of the states that have made commitments, and the USA is not on there, but the city of Santa Monica is. And so we pause the screen and we point this out to our students. So,
I also want to let you know that part of one of the disciplinary core ideas is actually human impact, and middle school through up. So we talk about it all the time. For example, we are having the video straws shown on Earth Day at Lincoln Middle School in the auditorium for every science class, and the executive producer is going to be there for question and answers. We're also working right now with tree people to make drought-tolerant and more aesthetically pleasing plants around our electronic bulletin board. We have a Roots and Shoots club at Lincoln. So there are many things that we're doing, and it's not optional. It's in the next generation science standards. So it's not an extra like labs. It's not. It's part of being educated in science.
Thank you, Maria. And then Lori, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's always so positive to hear from all of you. But then you brought up a good point when Dr. Doughty was asking you in terms of the collaborative piece of how we can be more interdisciplinary. And so that's my question to us. I mean, now that we're moving forward, how do we do that so that the great work that's done, because I think we're funded maybe by a grant or whatever to do that. I know that we did
grants, writing,
right.
Begging.
How can we do it as a permanent thing so that our faculty, that you see them here, they have that energy, but it's almost like you strap you down because you're not able to do everything you can.
It's true, but literally when we did those missions, one of them exploded, the SpaceX one, and so we had to run that again the next year. And then there was what's called an astronaut anomaly, which means they didn't do the experiment right, and so we had to set it up a third time. And so we had 3 missions in 1 year, and it almost killed me. So it was a lot to navigate. So,
but there again, it's not something that
we need more people.
We would do, as a cohort.
And the counselor said it was really challenging for the schedule, and they did it for like 3 years, and we were grateful, and we begged and begged. them to do it, but it was for special classes, for music, for math, for PE. It was just everything, and we're grateful we did it, but we had a taste and we want some more now.
So is this something that maybe block scheduling is more throwing it out?
Because it's the block that we did was this group of kids in English went to so English, and they went directly to me for all the science classes in 8th grade. So in all the English classes. So block scheduling gives you more time, and a creative teacher could find a way to do it, but I just haven't thought about it enough to figure out a way. But it shouldn't be so hard. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be so hard.
So I think there's interest in the board myself in establishing environments that support it. You know, we're actually in the process of developing a project-based learning environment.
Yes, I heard.
That's going to integrate because of the current structures of the school. We couldn't do it there, but it can be done. It's just a matter of we need allies and people that are willing to go there. So what I would say is I encourage you to continue to talk to your peers, and then as administration comes, gets aligned with this, and people start seeing the work, I think it can happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lori's our last speaker.
I don't want to repeat everything everybody said. So this was really fantastically educational for me, because we keep talking about the next generation science standards, but to understand what they really mean. This was a fabulous presentation, and I'm with Maria. I want to come see some of it in real time. The one question I wanted to ask, which I was saying to Craig and Maria, was when you see all these wonderful products of their learning and their work, I mean, I'm not trying to add to the burden, but I guess I'm just thinking out loud of how do we take it to the next step and say, well, how do they now take their learnings into practice? And might there be school-wide movements or presentations to parents? And, pressure. I mean, I don't mean it to be a really overtly political in that sense, but I mean, really, if this is what they're learning in this really wonderful, profound way, to take it to the larger community, just because then you get it from both ends. The political end, which is the city council in Santa Monica or Malibu, and the children who are learning about these things.
Tomorrow, we actually have some students from Samuel High coming to present at Lincoln. It is for a zero-waste lunch. How can you, not a committee, an organization, teachers, how can you do 5 things to make your lunch zero waste? So those students are coming from Samuel High and presenting in every period in the auditorium for us. So it's kids.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm thinking. Is how do we
that's been happening for a while.
Make kids be the not just the learners, but the teachers out there with their learnings. And
that's been happening. Ben Kay has brought his students to my classroom for probably the last 10 years. So
I was thinking of the littler ones and even the middle schoolers.
Little tiny ones.
I mean, as you see, they're.
This summer they're going to do it. That's what Irene said.
Thank you so very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Are you still doing experiments on back to school night for all the parents?
It gets kind of smoky. We have really good fire alarms now.
Oh, that's right. Great job. Thank you so very much. So, colleagues, that now brings us to our last communication for the evening.
I just want to tell you one thing. Sorry, before I go. We at Rogers are having our STEM open house June 4th this year, and I'll send you guys invites when we get them. But it's during the school day. It's first thing in the morning, and all the classrooms will be open. And I think some of you have been to Arcane's Arcade before. That's after the STEM open house too. So, and the students will be presenting some of their work that they've been doing then too.
Thank you. June 4th. June 4th? June 4th?
Yeah,
June 4th. Great. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Sarah Braff, you are up. You rock, Sarah. Thank you. We're on break next week at the college also. Very excited. This brings us to the superintendent's report, and as the superintendent gives his report, I just want to alert everyone on the board that with our apologies, we made an oversight, and that the resolutions for the Week of the Young Child, our Adult Ed Week resolution, and our favorite Dolores Huerta's birthday resolution did not make it to the agenda tonight, but we promise that all of those resolutions will make our agenda for May 2. So with apologies on behalf of the leadership team for putting the agenda together. Dr. Druddy.
You know, this past week I was very excited to hear about the learning that our teachers engaged in our project-based learning. We took a team of teachers to engage in some professional learning. And just the energy and the information that came back to me got me pretty excited. So instead of me reporting on that, I have Devon kind of talk about their experience, because I think he'll do a much better job than me.
Welcome, Dr. Smith.
All right. Happy to share this. Last week, myself, Jessica Risch, and Melissa Andino, AP up at Malibu High School, and 16 teachers from our project-based learning cohorts, 12 from Santa Monica, 4 from Malibu. We attended the Deeper Learning Conference at High Tech High in San Diego. Phenomenal experience for our team. The focus was on creating more equitable outcomes by engaging students in deeper learning, and the how it involves encouraging and supporting educators to be leaders of change, disruptors of inequity, and innovators of pedagogy. So I wanted to share an overview. So the conference began with a very charismatic keynote from Christopher Edmond, who is a professor at Columbia. He challenged educators to take the risk to get out of their restrictive comforts and engage their students. The workshops covered a wide range of current, relevant best practices, as we expected. However, there were a number of cutting-edge and innovative sessions as well. So one session that I attended, I want to share about. It was about understanding blockchain technology and to examine the potential educational approaches and all the implications for equity or inequity. So our group also received a personalized tour of High Tech High and a private Q&A session with Elliot Washer, co-founder of Big Picture Learning and the author of Leaving to Learn, which we've studied in our cohorts with activities and modeled activities such as Scratch DJ and our Rediscover Center work. So all that came from that book, and we got a chance to sit down with him and have a personal Q&A. And then we had the closing keynote was by Ted Dentersmith, who encouraged everybody to make small steps towards big change. Now, here were some of the outcomes, and this is where I got extremely excited. Besides the great technical and inspirational experiences shared by our team, the greatest value, I believe, was in the group conversations that happened naturally after the events of the day. And I can tell you firsthand, no exaggeration, this group has emerged with energy and desire to create and spread a culture of innovation, support, and the joy of learning. So they want to continue in this cohort more than ever now. And not only that, they want to get others involved. So they're going to do our recruiting. And I think that's extremely awesome for me. I'm very grateful for that. And I can say just in a statement, this cohort is becoming culture. And they want to spread it throughout the entire district, cohort by cohort. So I surveyed our attendees, and here's some of the comments. I asked, what was one takeaway? Here's some of the comments. Rejuvenating conversation with colleagues, becoming an agent of change. I want to try to get a team of teachers to do a project. That our history textbooks are exclusionary. The real effectiveness of real world problems with real world audience. The joy and impact of art as a mode of expression, presentation, and activism. And another comment, I need to do this work in order to make students global citizens. Impact on teaching. I asked them, what was the impact? Comments. I want to give direction slowly and clearly. Also, I want to provide more time for work. Time. I want to use music and beats to motivate and include more of my students. I'm pondering going gradeless. I want to allow students the opportunity to showcase their learning in a public setting. I want to make all my students real people. I want to be more thoughtful and engaging with students. Relationships first. On behalf of the cohorts, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Drotti. Thank you so much, Board, for all of your support. I'm confident that some of our teachers would be happy to share firsthand any of their projects and their learning. So thank you very much. It was a powerful experience, and we are not close to done.
I like that energy, Dr. Smith. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Trotti. That's your report. That's a good report.
I have one,
That's a
just
good
one
report.
comment. Just
Yes, Maria.
One comment. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, I had the pleasure of going with them to one of the conferences, and it wasn't even a heavy type of conference like you guys went to the Deeper Learning when I went with them to Sacramento, and just being with the team, because you can go to a conference and you're there, but unless you're sitting there with a group of the administrators that went with us, in San Francisco. I mean, that's where I got to know Patrick Miller. I don't think I would ever get to meet him, and that was before we decided to move him as the principal of Malibu High. But as we had those conversations during dinner and just things, I mean, because you get to sit there and just forget about everything else. There's no structures. Who cares who you are? But you're kind of, giving your comments in terms of what you saw that day. I mean, that's just, it's priceless. I mean, you're sitting there and figuring out, and I'm just seeing them telling me how they're going to move their schools and how they're going to embrace and their teachers and how they're going to. I'm just like, wow. I was, that's just one of the comments. And one of the other things, I guess, is from that, we took, and then I went with some of the parents to Cave, in Long Beach, with the parents and some of the, the liaisons that were there. And we had conversations with the parents and with the liaisons and seeing how can we work with their given structures. Because for me, it's whatever. It's a traditional K through 12, or pre-K through 12, and we have so many restrictions. But how can we, with all the restrictions, have the ability to move forward, to making some great changes, even with the restrictions of being a traditional, pre-K through 12. So I think we're doing great work. One of the other things, though, that I came from that, as a result of that, because I've been also my community stuff because of the college, is being able now to have conversations with, and I think they're willing to do that with a lot of our the private high schools and the elementaries and so forth that want to sit down with some of our leadership and and have even further expand the conversation, because many of them are already doing some of this work, and maybe it's different than ours, I don't know, but for us it's always letting them know the majority of us are in traditional K through 12, and what does that mean when you're in the private, and it's almost like we're setting up a private type of education within a public school setting. And I think that's remarkable. I mean, whatever, we have to continue to do what we're doing. But I think most of us, in terms of our, here on the board, I mean, we have to go out and venture. And without doing that, we kind of get, I don't know, we get stale just being up here and just listen. You have to go out there. That's what I'm saying. We have to go out and venture and see what's out there, and ask questions and just see it at work. But thank you all. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Maria. I think Maria speaks for the whole board. You're doing a fantastic job. Thank you. That, friends, now brings us to our consent calendar for the evening. This is item 8 on our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay. Oh, no, it doesn't have to be.
Actually, you get the motion first.
Okay. All right. So why don't we ask if there are any items to be pulled? Yes. Forgive me. I should have asked that first. Maria. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're pulling the award of purchase orders. Are there any other items that should be pulled? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent? Thank you, Ralph. Seconded by Lori. Thank you. And Craig, you have a comment? No? All right, so what we'll take up first is the consent agenda with everything absent the award of purchase orders. It'll be a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
I'm also yes. So we are unanimous there. Thank you, Sarah. And then that And that'll bring the award of the purchase orders. Is there a motion to approve the purchase orders? Yes?
I'll move it, but then we can discuss it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll move it.
Okay, so Oscar moves it. Is there a second? Seconded by Lori. Craig?
My understanding is that we're not taking individual line items anymore off the consent calendar. We're just going to vote up, down again. Okay. So the only thing, I think we're still okay.
Why are we, I mean, I don't know what that understanding is. I mean, if people, so you take, then we're going to have to pull those separately and vote.
Pull those items and then.
Why not? So it's an operational issue. It's not a legal issue.
Yeah, I literally cannot represent votes for all the different things in there. Like last time we were scrolling the Pillsbury was back on again, and so
May I say?
There was an amended motion last time to vote on out that one item, but any item that gets postponed, it's going to keep appearing on the next one.
Okay, so I think Ralph's question is a good question.
Yeah.
It's operational, it's not legal, right? That's our interpretation. So I'm wondering if we couldn't here. It's hard for me to think that we can't take the vote the way we want to take it then. So that if it's about, and that we simply add a narrative, a notation, and what we can do is add a notation to our minutes. So we can choose to vote as we need to vote, and if it's purely operational, then maybe however you record it in the minutes, we just notate it. There's a narrative there, that Ms. Leon Vasquez recused herself or abstained on a particular this, that, and the other thing, right? So we can do that. And so maybe we just move forward like that. Is that okay? It's the only way we can move forward, I think, to get the vote necessary to approve these things.
That's not on the purchase orders.
Okay, so why don't we take votes and then with to qualify? So right, so I think that you could make that comment because I think as long as it is reporting that you're voting on, you're approving of all the things minus, and you speak it into the record, then I think that'll be okay. And then we might want to double. And then we'll double check.
And it will be in the minutes.
And that'll be in the minutes.
Right.
Is it okay? Is everybody comfortable with doing that? So I hear from member Maria Leon Vasquez that she will be voting on purchase orders save or except for those where she is getting reimbursement. We'd like the minutes to note that she is abstaining from those, and the record should report that. Oscar, what would you like to do?
I'm abstaining from item in the purchase order 194072 Atkinson, and also item 194041 Teddy's Cafe, as those line items, people representing those have supported activities or events at the Pico Youth and Family Center where I work. And I'll be voting no on 193734 Pillsbury.
Okay.
You want to do it that way? Oh, the third one is 193734. It's a no vote on Pillsbury.
Craig?
I'll join Oscar in the no vote on 193734. And for whatever it's worth, Sarah, Maria's number seems to be 194099. 194099.
So as a chair, I do recognize one issue here. I do think if you're going to cast a vote in the negative, as a nay vote, that we should separate that out, at least as a vote from the dais. I understand that there'll be one operational vote for Ms. Sarah, but we'll do that separately. So if there are no objections, we'll pull that. But I think with Maria, I think we're okay with that. So, but with the abstention, it's something different, I think, and as long as it's narrated in the minutes, I think we'll be okay. And we'll double check. I'll make sure that at our next agenda setting that we'll confer with council to make sure that that's okay for us to do that and that we've met any kind of legal requirements, looking at that operational versus legal question that Ralph has put before us. Lori?
I just want to say this in as generous a way as I can. We could each sit here and look at purchase orders and say, well, I don't think that particular consulting firm is really worth that much money, or I didn't really like the work they did for us, or whatever. And we could all do that. I just think we should think long and hard about voting basically to not pay bills that the district has incurred, and letting other people vote for them and not voting for them. Because they are contracts and they're bills that we as a district are, obligated to pay. And I just think it's kind of weird. I understand your disagreements about, long ago directions for the lawsuit and all that, but I just want you to think about that. And I really do mean that kindly. It's because it's not about the particular. It just makes me a little uncomfortable.
Thank you, Lori. Maria?
I just on that note, as a board, however the vote comes out, whether it's 4-3, 5-2, 6-1, 7-0, those on the losing end always have to support the vote. So I think in these situations, when these come back like that, then they have to be supportive, because that's the vote that the board took, to move forward with this litigation, and that's just one of the costs of litigation. So for us to support yes, even though you were like the majority, even if it was a 4-3 vote, it was still it's still considered the full board that voted on it. And we don't go individualizing saying, well, I didn't vote for that, because that's not the purpose of how the boards work. We have to take it.
Thank you. I do want to get close to say that I don't want to debate this because it's not agendized. So if with the permission of Oscar and Lori, could I read that you have withdrawn the motion on this purchase order business so that we can make new motions? Would that be all right with you? So may I please call for a motion on the Pillsbury one alone? Is there a motion to approve that? Thank you, Ralph. Seconded by Maria. So we're going to take up that alone. It'll be a roll call vote. Ralph?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Craig?
Sorry, this is Pillsbury alone?
Yes, it is.
No.
Oscar?
No.
I'm a yes. So that's, thank you. Thank you. 4-2. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we'll have the remaining items, Ms. Sarah, noting that Maria is going to be abstaining on the one, and that we'll make sure that the minutes narrate that articulates that.
And I'm abstaining on the two.
Oh, yes, and then Oscar's too. Okay, so we got, thank you, Ralph. Is there a motion is there such a motion? Moved by Ralph, seconded by Craig. We'll go back to a roll call vote. Ralph?
Yes.
Maria?
That's
Lori?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and again, we'll just make sure that there's the articulation of the two abstentions for their two members, Leon Vasquez and De La Torre. Thank you, friends.
Question. Board Member Leon Vasquez brought up a very interesting point, and I thought about, can we look into the issue of, because what we do in closed session, it doesn't get reported out, sort of. Like when the board decides to, support or oppose litigation, it's not something that we usually report that out. I'm thinking that might be one way where we might be able to save sort of the tension, where there is a majority decision, and I do believe those obligations need to be paid. But what rubs me the wrong way is if I don't support, let's say, litigation or moving forward with a certain decision, like how do I get make that sort of into the public record, And so the question that I have for our legal counsel is to see, is that possible?
Sure.
Is there a possibility,
So I give you my word that we will take it up. So I'll make sure that John Keane and myself take this to our meeting with Dr. Drati and make sure that we address that, and we'll ask for there to be a legal memo provided for all of us. It's a great question. And I think that you're not the only one who has that question. I mean, as a thing of our service. It is not. Thank you on the agenda. Thank you. So we're going to hew back here to the Brown Act. Dr. Andrade, guess what this brings us to? I think Dr. Irene, I know our friends are going to come back up here because we're at our discussion item on our history, social science, instructional materials, and that there is a recommendation for adoption before us.
Okay, Dr. Castillo-Gonzalez will do the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good
Welcome
evening.
back.
Thank you. It's going to be
You
a
are
two-parter.
so patient with us.
No,
Thank you.
good. And I apologize. I know this is all coming towards the end, like now the end of the year, but we've done a lot of work throughout the year. And there you go. Thank you. Thank you. Just like, I know. Everyone needs a little stretch break. Just as I shared earlier with science, it's been a year-long, work, and we've engaged in. We've also been through a lot this last year looking at history, social science in both middle school and high school. So tonight I'm here to share with you a recommendation to adopt materials for grades 9 through 12 for history, social science. And what I'm going to do throughout this presentation, I'll try to make sure I limit it to 30 minutes, is to first provide an overview of the process that we used to review the materials. And I'm also going to highlight some examples of how the materials are aligned with the FAIR Act that we've talked about in previous sessions together. And then finally, I'll just go ahead and share the recommendation from our high schools. One thing I'm very excited about is that all 3 of our high schools agreed unanimously around this recommendation, which was very exciting. So just to kind of get us started, this is just the list of our teachers who participated in the adoption process. So I'll make sure everyone has a copy of what they need there. So when you take a look here at the list, you can see we have representatives from all 3 of our high schools, and this was a great group to work with. It was actually my first opportunity to work with history, social science at the high school level, and they were engaged in every single session that we were together. I also want just to briefly thank our educational technology colleagues in Ed Services. Bertha Roman and Ariel Gleicher and Sherry Hinding were instrumental in this process, because part of the process you'll hear about is piloting the program, and they were able to support us with the technology. So I want to share the first thing we did as working with our teachers is we wanted to make sure we all understood some of the shifts or key themes in the history, social science framework. And you can see, and it's kind of light the color there, but very connected to our work here as a district. In the framework is an emphasis to really teach content and approach content through an inquiry approach. So students are making meaning again, and think that looking at content from the past, from present, making connections, and making sure that we look at this as kind of being civic minded and that we take action as we not only as students but also as we enter the adult world. So you will see kind of connections to that throughout the framework and in our textbooks. So the other piece I want to share with you tonight is that, in Ed Services, we've been working for the past year. I'm sure Dr. Morris shared this with you as well. We've been working on an instructional framework that captures what we are committed to and believe in here in our school district. And these 4 elements of the framework were key as we evaluated materials. And I'm going to talk with you about how those connected to the criteria in a minute. This is the California criteria. This is basically the non-negotiables that the state looks at before they approve any publishers for districts to kind of even consider. So you can see some of the criteria here as things that are, again, really important to us. For example, looking at universal access, making sure that materials are accessible to all learners, from advanced to English learners, et cetera. Maria, do you have a question?
From this, who is this the legislators committee that's looking into that, or who, or is it from the California Department of Education that they're the ones that make the recommendation for the legislature to vote on this?
So looking at this here in particular,
the criteria.
So from the California Department of Education, there's committees that work on these different frameworks. Like, so the History Social Science is an appointed committee with educators from across the state, and so they're appointed and they come together and develop then they work on the framework.
And who approves it then at the end of the day?
I think the State Board of Education is, because I know that
they
Dr.
do.
Strauss, I know, is involved in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
So, and also we've had some of our teachers, like Adrienne Coyardi, who's one of our teachers at Samuel High. She's participated in that process in the past as well, where we're trying to encourage our teachers in our district. Like another example would be for looking at the ethnic studies requirement and work at the state level. Dr. Sean Arce is part of that committee, which is great. So we love to have our own teachers participate in that. But this is, again, just looking at the kind of the non-negotiable essentials that the state wants us to look at. But then it's really up to us as a district to determine what's the lens that we want to use, what is important to us locally. So this is the visual. I think that's really important for us to talk about for a minute, because when we look at that instructional framework I mentioned earlier, which is a guaranteed viable curriculum, high-performing teams, culturally responsive practices, and I'm missing one, student family engagement. Those are all parts of our instructional framework. And I'm going to chunk these out for you. So if we look at social justice standards and the FAIR Act, those are important for us locally because it's very much connected to our culturally responsive practices. And if we look at inquiry-based learning, definitely connected to our engagement. I mean, all of this, they're all overlap. PLC resources, professional learning communities. We know that in our work with our site leadership teams and looking at data together as grade level teams or department teams, we want to make sure that we were looking at that. What is available as a resource for teams to use? Digital resources, with the work we've been doing around like Clever, for example, Google Classroom, we want to make sure whatever we were selecting was going to be compatible. Universal access. One specific lens we were looking at very closely was our English learners based on our student achievement data and looking at that group in particular. We noticed that there's definitely a difference in the materials that were approved by the state and how they approached English language development. So that was something that we took a look at as well. And with our dual immersion program in our district, we wanted to really look at the Spanish language materials that were available in history, social science, because that is the content that we have in Spanish all the way through high school. So we want to make sure that we consider that as well. So this just kind of outlines for you the process. It's been a year-long process, starting with some work together around the history social science framework. And from there, we formed a high school committee to take a look at some materials that we could consider. They evaluate those materials based on the criteria that I shared, and they narrowed it down to two options, Pearson and McGraw-Hill. And what we did that was, I think, unique this year for history, social science, and for secondary in particular, is we actually went through an 8-week pilot of each of these programs. What the teachers had shared with me in the past is that they would review materials and use a toolkit to kind of look at the criteria, but they just kind of had just kind of a cursory review over the materials. They really didn't try them out. So thanks to the support of Dr. Mora and Bertha Roman and her team, we were able to fully pilot these programs, the digital components, the hard copy, everything for the 8 to 10 weeks. And what was great is for the history teachers in particular, they felt like, wow, we're actually going to receive this technology and support they didn't feel they had received at that level before. So they were very excited about that. I think it also motivated them to participate in the pilot, having access to, to these resources. So throughout the pilot for each program, the teachers would come together after school or during the school day to talk about the strengths and weaknesses they found with the programs. So we were kind of, and also talking to their students. What do the students think of the materials? Which did they prefer as far as reading level, images, graphs, technology, all those pieces. And what we did about a month ago now is we were together again to talk about pros and cons of both of the programs, and then they made some recommendations, which I'm going to share with you. So, so that was the first part, is just kind of the overall, the process. But the second piece I want to share with you is the alignment with the FAIR Act, because, as you know, what we talked about before, the state of California also asked us to look at social content. How are different groups, especially in the diverse state of California and in our own district, how are they represented in the textbook and the materials? I also wanted to make sure we preface it by sharing that this is, when we look at materials, this is not the curriculum, this is a resource. But we still want to make sure that we are looking for, when we talk about the FAIR Act, it's, fair, accurate, inclusionary, and how we include all groups, and respectful representation. And I think the piece that's really important here is the accurate piece, because sometimes when we talk about accuracy in history, it's kind of the good, the bad, and ugly, right? It's like what we're really proud of and what the contributions and the great things we've done in this country, but also where there's been some accurate things that we have to talk about that have happened that we need to reflect upon and take action and learn from those experiences that also repeat themselves over time. So what I want to focus on here was just the connections to the FAIR Act. And with the FAIR Act in 2011, there was a specific emphasis on thinking about how are we including our LGBTQ community and also persons with disabilities. So this is an example from world history. So in world history, this is an excerpt from looking at Industrial Revolution and the roles of women and how that changed with the Industrial Revolution. And what I appreciate about this piece too is it talks about gender and roles, but also class. And this is an example of, it's kind of an interactive gallery where you can hover over different people who are there in the photo, and you can learn about the person's as far as their class, their work, what challenges, what expectations were that they had to face during this Industrial Revolution. So that's just one example from world history. This one here is from economics, and we really want our students to really understand how to make decisions as they leave us around entrepreneurship and opportunities and different fields that they could pursue, and why people make a decision that they make. And in this example here features a female STEM entrepreneur, which I think was a really important piece because we need to really promote more females in the STEM field and really promote this as an option. So I thought that was a really great example of economics and looking at gender and different roles and professions people might pursue. And this is basically an example of a video. There are video clips that students can hear firsthand from different entrepreneurs. These next few examples are from U.S. history. So one part of U.S. history in that course is looking at culture in the United States. And this one here in particular talks about the 1920s and the gay subculture. And it also talks about over time what that has looked like and evolved into, because and what I really appreciate about this and going through this review is I learned so much about history and what's happened in this country and when things actually started to emerge, the challenges that people face. I thought it was very powerful to see this included. Here is also another example of minority groups joining the World War II and the effort. But I also thought this was an important piece because it talks about in the 1950s, when we talk about, I think it was called the Lavender Scare, I believe it was called. I have to look at my notes again. But basically there was an effort to fire homosexuals from any government jobs. And it talks about that in this section, which I thought was powerful as well. And here, building on civil rights movement, this also talks about free speech and looking at publications, especially looking again at LGBTQ and gaining more rights over time, and also serving office, which I thought that was important. That was an important part as far as contributions that was highlighted here in this section. And this one, again, building on the inclusion of students with disabilities. This is this part here is about the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, and when that was signed into law, and the impact not only in the workforce but also in the school system as well. My eyes are so bad I can't read that. I want to pull up my notes for a second. Ugh. Which one am I on here? Oh, thank you. So this one here is an example of looking at affirmative action and where students engage in a debate about whether this is an appropriate strategy to have in our country and where has it made a difference, where have been challenges. So they'll look at several court cases to kind of take a look at that and have a debate in class based on the research. And what I love about this, with looking at the new framework, that there's an emphasis on students looking at primary sources and secondary sources and really thinking about, let's look at this and analyze what we're reading and the impact and what was the motivation for those who wrote that legislation, for example. And they can, and not only looking at primary source documents, but also what does that look like as far as like art forms like poetry and movies and other, art to see the connections as well. So it's not just looking at primary source documents. This one here is looking at access to looking at different, especially in athletics and academics for students with disabilities. And that was part of the government class. And there's actually a couple of different examples from government. This one was one that's actually what I really appreciate about this one here from government. It talks about free speech and privacy and access for students. And this one here on the bottom, students versus Arcadia Unified, that was, I was so happy to see something current in this textbook. This is actually 2015. And as I was reading about this, I was also thinking about my experience as a principal, and when some of these issues came, I know that others here who probably remember this as well, where you have students, transgender students, or who presenting themselves as maybe they were born female, but now are transgender and present as male. And in this case in particular, this was a case where a student in high school was made to go to the nurse's office to the bathroom instead of going to the male bathroom. And the student also, during a field trip, had to go on a separate cabin instead of being with the other males in the group. And that was, I think, a very powerful case. There's other cases as well, but that one is noted in this discussion around students and rights. And this is also different cases related to marriage equality. And so, again, they're ranging from, this is from 1960s, but all the way to 2013. So our teachers were very happy to see that, wow, we actually could have current information because they haven't adopted a textbook in about 12 years, just so you know. It's been a long time, very long time. So in addition to kind of the alignment with the FAIR Act, the teachers had other specific feedback that they wanted to share with you about why they were recommending Pearson. They felt that looking at the engagement piece, the technology, you can see the interactive videos, primary sources, the connection with integration with Google Docs and Google Classroom. What they liked also is that two teachers can collaborate together. That's been an issue with our collab classes sometimes, that we have students in general education and students who maybe are assigned to a special education teacher, and they're in the same classroom for biology, for example, or in this case, it could be world history. And sometimes the teachers don't have access to the same information because only one teacher can be on the system. And with this system of Pearson, you can actually have more than one teacher have access to the same students, which was great. The teachers also felt that the assessment options were wide and varied, that they were project-based learning opportunities where they can assess students' understanding of content and they were able to apply what they've learned and not just, like bubble-in multiple choice type of assessments. The other lens I think that was very important for us as a district is we wanted to make sure whatever we selected could be easily supplemented with our social justice standards, since those are standards that we've adopted here in Santa Monica, Malibu. And the team of teachers felt that there were a lot of great connections. We have a couple of our teachers who were part of this committee who have also been part of our social justice cohorts and also our teaching and learning council. So they felt this was a really good match for that work as well. I've talked about the English learner support, adaptive reading levels. We want to make sure that the content is not watered down, but that students have access, and you're able to actually change the reading level with the online version of the text as well. Teachers can also assign different levels of text as far as the articles that are available with the program. So the challenge that we had with looking at the Spanish materials in K-8, all of the materials are in English and Spanish. In 9-12, it was a huge challenge. But in Pearson, the immersion teachers that we had during the pilot felt like this was the best option because the summaries and a lot of supplemental materials were available in Spanish. And the good news is, just recently at the CABE conference, Claudia Bautista found some additional titles for us to consider for U.S. history in particular, which we're very excited because there was nothing on the state list in Spanish for 9 through 12, only for K-8. Well, also the state only produces the K-8 list, that's why. But we were going with the publishers that are approved for K-8. So I want to share with you some next steps that we're very excited about. So pending approval, we have penciled in a training for teachers because they have asked to please receive a training with materials before we leave for summer, so they have time to review the materials in the summer and be ready for next year. So that's going to be May 30th. And again, pending approval. I also want to let you know that we have been in the process of approving, and you've actually approved some of the AP course texts. We have a couple of that are remaining, government and world history. And the reason why we've looked at books, but we haven't adopted for AP World is because the College Board is making some changes with that curriculum. So we're holding on that for now. AP Government, our Malibu and Samo teachers are right now talking about which they might prefer. We're actually because they have different ideas about those right now. But one thing that was suggested by Dr. Mora is to look at one being core, one being supplementary, so we can actually look at adopting both. We did that for AP U.S. History, and that seems to be working really well, is to actually meet the needs of the two high schools who are offering those AP courses. And this is the part I'm very excited about. I know Dr. Moore is excited about this too, is in our conversations with the teachers, we want to take a look at developing a curriculum guide because those do not exist right now in history, social science. The teachers develop they have of course, their syllabus and their course content, but looking at something uniform across all, that's going back to guaranteeing viable curriculum so all students have the same content that's being expected and experienced. I am going to work with Dr. Sean Arce to work with these teachers in revamping our U.S. history course and integrating the social justice standards, and also hopefully this would be one of the courses which would meet the ethnic studies, American cultures graduation requirement. So I think it's going to give us an opportunity and just one thing I just want to add, when we were looking at our adoption cycle, we've adopted in the last few years English language arts, ELD, math, and originally we were going to hold off on history, social science, and just wait for science. As you heard, we have a lot to do in science as well. And so that we just made a decision to go ahead and move forward with 6 through 12 because when we think about the social justice standards, we think about the FAIR Act. This is really the best content area to start with and thinking about how do we make those connections. But teachers need current materials as resources to help with this work. So that's why we went ahead and made a decision to do 6 through 12 now. You're going to hear about 6 through 8 next time, but this is again, all three schools unanimously agree that this is what they would like to see adopted with your approval. So this is time for questions.
Thank you so much. I have a question too. I'll go Maria, Craig, Richard, Oscar. Maria, Richard, Craig, Oscar.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez. My question though is as I see that, I think as far as the state of California, they can try their best to do whatever they want to do, but it's still not inclusive of really for social justice. I know we're going to have to probably do a lot of it on our own, but I think part of it, it really stems back at whoever is putting these history books and their background in terms of what their history is, to kind of bring in really what a true, world history or U.S. history is all about, that we can teach our students. So having said that, I'm wondering because, I'm looking at some of these and I think look great, but, some of the stories that you're talking about, minority groups joined the war during World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, where you had a lot of, heroes, from the Tuskegee Airmen to those the Latinos that were in the various wars. And I'm sure they have their heroes in their groups that were war heroes and have been and received Purple Hearts and all that, which is really all the time excluded from these histories. I don't know in terms of the specific in that chapter whether it does capture it or not. But even as a result of that, some of the history that's made as a on that as these people coming back home and how they're treated and mistreated as as veterans and heroes, going to war and representing and protecting our country. But those are the kind of things, because I'm seeing as it all rolls out. But it's almost like you have to have some of those those particular pieces of history that really affect. For me, I'm following from 78, which affects me, the Bakke decision, where you have the beginning of the reverse discrimination suits leading out to the breakdown of affirmative action. So all that stuff leading, what gets you motivated and for many of us to get involved, and hopefully in the future as, cases come up and things happen and votes are taken, all these propositions, the 203s and whatever, that they were very negative. What does that mean? And I think our students really, all of our students, no matter what race, color, whatever, they need to understand the ramifications of some of the history and the votes and the elections and the course of history in terms of these court cases that all of a sudden start from a good premise and all of a sudden get, go negative because of the lawsuits or whatever. Everything, that comes out, comes down as a result of something that is not favorable to the let's say the majority of those that control the powers to be, that control the decision making in not only in the state of California but in the United States. Luckily, we're in a better place in California these days. But this is what I'm saying, because once you begin, for me, is not only reading what you read, the traditional, again, academics. There has to be other outside sources, because that's the only way students are going to really develop the critical analysis. That's how you begin to understand when you're seeing diverse and interpretations of the same thing. But sometimes all we see is these books, and it's only one-sided to me. So there has to be. I'm hoping that with Dr. Arce or whoever's going to be doing that you get the other counter.
Oh, definitely.
So that, because that's the only way that I got through history that way. I aced it without having to read some of the traditional books, because I had formed my analysis from other outside readings. And that's what you have to do. This is how kids can come back, and whatever gets thrown to them, they can analyze the situation. That's what we're talking about, right? Trying to, for them to be an analytical in whatever they endeavor in the future, so they can be responsible, people. And I think they're more marketable that way when they're thinking, like, oh, okay, instead of just the traditional stuff that we give them to read. But I think this is a good attempt. I'm glad that you at least had the cohort of the faculty, the teachers, that they got together and kind of talked about it, but they also brought in the whole thing that we're going through, social justice, that theme that has to really come out as a support on it. Because otherwise, then, it's like we kind of keep telling them that to keep supporting the status quo, and I don't know whether we really want to do that. We really want to give them the ability to question.
Yes, and if I can add, just because what you shared, Maria, definitely, it's. I'm thinking about my own experience as a parent in this district, and my daughter was in a U.S. history class, and I was looking at the book, and I was looking, because you look at it through your lens, right? And I was like, what do they say about Mexican repatriation? Let me find that, and it was like this, 4 sentences. But what was powerful is the teacher, Miss Bisson, she asked the students to find out, I don't want to cry about this, but let's find out more about what something that maybe affected your family. That's powerful. And I think that, so it gave my daughter an opportunity to go and interview my dad, who did have some connection to that when that happened. And that was a powerful example of project-based learning, too. And I think that speaks to the importance of not just relying on textbooks. We have to develop curriculum guides together. So I'm excited that this is going to be an opportunity to do that.
Culturally relevance. I mean, that's how you keep the cultural relevancy. That some of, like people from Mexican descent or, from African descent forget about that because all they're taught is this stuff, and they begin to lose their culture in that respect because they lose the language and they lose everything else comes with it unless you keep it relevant.
And that's why, like, the identity standards,
Right,
the
right.
justice standards with social justice are perfect ways to bring that. And so, and I think that's important because we'll never find the perfect textbook ever. And and again, I agree with you. When people are writing the textbooks, they're coming from their lens. So I think that's an important piece for us. Yep.
Thank you. That was nicely said.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Craig, Richard, Oscar. Ralph.
So I'd like to expand on that a little bit. My concern, I mean, we are absolutely doing great work in moving with along the course that this board has laid out, social justice standards, relevance, everybody sees themselves in the curriculum. How does that work with AP? You know, we've got the FAIR Act in California. The college boards are clearly not. So how does it work when should I be comfortable that those courses are going to represent this board well in the learning of those students? Because it feels to me like that is the same old thing again, and in a brutally rigorous indoctrinational fashion, because it's memorize, write this way, write this thing. So is that something we should be worried about?
I think it's a great question. It actually came up.
Yes, to convince the AP-driven people to say you can actually augment the curriculum in a way is a difficult task. I'm hoping, because there's interest in IB right now. I think we have 2 elementaries, I believe, that are
Yes.
that we're going to support to implement IB. I'm hoping that catches up. But IB is directly focused on social justice standards. I'm hoping people, at least in the community, start seeing that you can address both and still have the same level of rigor.
And actually, Board Member Foster, that's actually come up a few times already, not only with history, social science, but NGSS, around the shifts that are required, like we just talked about, is how do we know this is happening in AP classes? We've actually started to engage in that conversation, and even when we talk about professional development and that all teachers means all teachers needs to be, I'm looking at Sarah, I know you'll support us, but that looking at, and that's exactly right, because I think what's really, understand from the AP teacher's perspective too, they want to make sure that their students are successful and can pass the AP tests. At the same time, I think we need to look at the curriculum guide, and that's what right now is non-existent for history, social science. It's a great question, and they've actually started talking about that.
Thank you, Craig. I have myself on the list, Oscar, and then Ralph. I want to first just say thank you to both of you, to your entire team. From the littlest thing, like putting out the display for us, for those of us who asked to have it be up here, and thank you for that. But then also, it's really clear to me, I haven't been on the board a long time, but over the course of the many years, I've really seen in the presentations when they come to us on book adoptions, really, I know that staff is listening to the sensibilities of those of us on the dais, and more importantly, forget us, the people in the community, as you mentioned, when you talk about students and what they're calling for. So I think that you should be commended for that, your entire team.
Thank you.
One of the questions I have is about, well, one, I think it's kooky that we have to buy these books. Right? I understand that. I asked that quickly when I got on the board, right? Why do we have to spend all of these monies on these textbooks when many of them end up, I think, this is all anecdotal, Dr. Dradi says, no, Richard, that's not what happens, but they end up as, door stops and other, because I think that a lot of teachers are seeing that there are ways to, in their view, and they're right to do so, to teach the curriculum standards in alternative ways than from a textbook that I think most of us agree is kind of, let's say, vanilla and trying to be, is just not where we're at, perhaps. Is it possible for a teacher, if he, she, they wanted to say, teach Zen's a people's history, are those kinds of opportunities available for, I'm not advocating that particular text per se, but I think that that's one that comes to mind for many people when thinking about alternative histories, or not alternative history, history from a different perspective being brought forward. Is there that kind of space? So that's one. I have a couple, so maybe I could just add. If you don't know these right away, then of course you can say, "Hey, Richard, we'll get back to you on that." And then I wanted to ask you about if that's the case, how much of this also are we thinking about? And this one can come offline, about the development of our ethnic studies and American cultures degree courses that we're developing in the cohorts that are in place. I could imagine that we could have history courses where there is a kind of a deep dive in particular areas with particular communities, and that would satisfy our requirement. I'm just wondering, I know it's hard to straddle, right, the requirement and with the curriculum requirements and the standards, but there could be some space, right, for individual teachers to follow their passion as well as their students, and to create more of an opportunity. I don't know if that's possible. Those are the two questions. Is that possible? Yeah. And two, then what about the supplemental materials? How much, I know we approve them. I know the supplementals come to us, but would you say that is there is this an ongoing commitment of teachers to identify new and supplemental materials always? I'm sorry,
Yes.
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I would share that, well, one, I know when you're asking about do we have to have the textbooks, I think it's a great question because, with Williams, we do need to make sure that we have enough standards-based materials for students. We've also had some conversation now that we're moving one-to-one. Do we need to have everything in hard copy? Because most of these publishers now have all the digital access and we can go that route. We didn't know if we were ready to do that 100% yet, but that's one piece. Yes. We can. You definitely, because I checked on that because that's come up a few times from teachers too. Because in our district, I really believe teachers feel that they do have a lot of autonomy over what materials and resources they're bringing in to teach the standards. So it's that even though we've adopted like a core textbook, we're not a district where we have to use this 80% of the time. That's not the case at all. And I would say, in particular with ELA and math, there are so many supplementary materials that teachers have been able to curate and share that are now part of our district curriculum guides. So if it's something we're purchasing, they have to go through the adoption process. And as you shared, it comes here for supplementary materials. But I can envision what you were sharing is like replacement units. So if we're developing a curriculum guide that maybe they do actually have a deeper dive into a specific area or group, whatever it may be, the topic, and that could be part of the curriculum guide as a replacement unit and an option. But I want to get to the point where it's not just teachers working in isolation developing these, but also actually sharing them. Because if it's a unit that someone spent time developing and they feel like this was really powerful for our students, we need to have a space to share that too. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but but yes, we definitely supplementary materials are used a lot in our district. Mm-hmm. A replacement unit or. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Oscar and then Ralph.
I want to. I was suggesting about teachers in the classroom who, there's new standards, and it's sometimes I'm sure it's a little frustrating, having to go through a new movement, of standards, but I'm so glad to hear, that from what I've heard from many of the teachers in our school district, they really embrace, social justice standards. What we're coming forward with is very different than what has come out in the past, and is very relevant to us as a community. I'm glad to hear that there's lesson plans, like standards aligned lesson plans that teachers can access, because I think that's the challenge. I mean, we just, we have a Black History Month, or we have a Martin Luther King Day or Cesar Chavez Day, and those are the only times that we I guess for the most part, that we send out something. I don't even know if we do that anymore. We might. I'm pretty sure we do. I know that was a past practice of sending information out, like, oh, you could use this as a lesson plan for this day, to celebrate like Cesar Chavez Day or Martin Luther King Day. And I think we have to go beyond sort of that tokenized approach, of like, only on this day we're going to learn about these figures. And it's great to see sort of the progress that we've made, throughout, like, the FAIR Act and the movement for American cultures, for ethnic studies. That's important, because what happens is that the people that make the textbooks, they start, making some changes, because they see that these movements are impacting their bottom line, and they want to be able to be relevant, to sell their product. And so it has a very important impact. When we went on the CSBA's legislative lobby day, Aiden and myself went to Sacramento, and they were in the process of, bringing the ethnic studies bill, Assemblymember Medina's bill, to the Education Committee. And so there was a lot of talk about that. And, I think it's important that for us to take a lot of, to pat ourselves on the back, because Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District, we've already made it a graduation requirement. When the state, the state's poised to pass this legislation as well, because we've talked to people, and they said the new Governor Newsom, will sign it, even though it already passed the Senate and the Assembly last time around, and so there's a new governor now. So we're going to be ahead of the game, so that's good, because this is going to be a state law, and it's important to give the resources to the teachers. I'm really happy about that. But one thing, in my education in this school district, there were very, very limited times when my culture was talked about, but there was also very powerful moments of, I guess what you would call intersectionality, right, where you get to learn about different people and within movements or history and so forth. And those are very powerful moments for a school district where there's diversity. So look at those, like the intercultural, relations, let's say, even in the civil rights movement, like for me, learning about, we saw right here in the slide, one of the slides, you talked about the desegregation of public schools, which is very important for us, right? And the Mendez case, was before Brown versus Board. And for me to understand that the governor of the time, and it slips my mind who he was, I think Earl Warren, was it? I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, he was the governor of California during the Mendez case, right? So he already knew a little bit about that. Then he was appointed to the Supreme Court. So I'm forgetting his name. But in any case, he had that knowledge, to understand that in the civil rights movement, there were, young Jewish boys and young women, who were going to the South and who were killed, by the white supremacists, in Mississippi, for example. Like, all that knowledge right there really makes you see things differently, that it's not just one group fighting for justice. And I think it's real important for our students to understand that. So anytime that we can look at that intersectionality, intercultural piece, I think is very rich for our school district. And how you facilitate that in the classroom, like how teachers, because that's different than a lesson plan. A lesson plan on the standards is one thing, but then the human relations aspect of it, like if you bring up, let's say, a controversial topic, like how do you manage that in the classroom? I'm sure a lot of teachers know how to do that, but it's important for us to give those tools as well, for that human relations type work that can come, just you look at any controversial issue right now, whether it's, the wall or gun control or whatever it may be, these, big topics that happen in our country. You look at the comments, let's say in social media, and you're like, wow, it's crazy how, some people have really strong feelings about these things. So I know that can take place in the classroom. So how do you facilitate that so that there's real? We use the diversity in the classroom as our strength, in our system, and I think that's very powerful. So anything that we can do to bring that forward, in the classroom, I think is something worth looking into. But thank you very much. I mean, all this is great progress.
Thank you. And one thing that when I was speaking with Dr. Smith back here, we were talking about, I'm talking about you. We were seeing that, as we look at developing his curriculum guides, whether it's for history, social science, or any other content, that maybe we need to provide like a day of whether it's project-based learning, just kind of fundamentals around that, and social justice standards. And when you talk about intersectionality, I know it's something that Dr. Arce talks a lot about in his social justice cohorts, but there are multiple days, some of these trainings. Can we do something before anyone dives into curriculum, whether it's a day to just dig into this approach and what would this look like? So a lot of great ideas are coming up.
Thank you, Oscar. Our last speaker is Ralph.
I guess my question is next steps. So what can you tell us about the training that's coming?
So if the program is adopted, these materials, then we would bring in the representative from Pearson to come and work with our teachers. And typically it's a 3-hour training where they review all the different aspects of the program. And we tend to focus a lot on the technology integration piece because that is something that is the biggest shift for our teachers. And we've noticed that especially with history, social science, who have had no technology available to them. So we really want to focus on that piece. And in the afternoon, typically we give them time to actually collaborate and begin looking at how they might start planning or launching their year.
I asked the question because, a comment that, comes up and is strong and many times is the quality of professional development, and I think we've worked very hard on being more collaborative, with teachers and providing, workshops and the like that are more meaningful, and not just to have Pearson come and do their sort of song and dance about here's what we do and this, and where in some of these instances, as you know, that California is certainly ahead of is different than other parts of the country, let's say, in that we're even different than lots of parts of California. So to ensure that to have a conversation with Pearson folks and to really understand what it is that they're going to be bringing, and make sure it's relevant, and make sure that the people who are coming are representative of the demographics of what we're trying to talk about, and so that the teachers feel that this is, it's really, it's worthwhile being there and spending the time, and it's advantageous to instilling the qualities of education that we've all talked about.
I think that's a great point because I've heard that before from teachers, especially with publishers. They don't want a sales pitch. It's like we've already selected your program. We don't want any
we've already bought it.
Exactly.
So who are the people who are coming to talk about it? And they if they're making this effort, hopefully that some of the people are coming. We talk about changing the face of our of our teachers and administrators, and it should be the same thing here in these companies. So who's coming and who's talking to our teachers? Let's make sure that it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you so much for the presentation tonight, and we expect this back as a major action item. So thank you for bringing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have one other discussion item this evening. That's item 10C, which is the District Advisory Committee draft charges for 2018-19. That's from the IEEDAC. There's no need to discuss these unless you would like to see some changes. If there's no need for changes, then we'll just move this right along. Checking out. It seems like we're good to go. Great. So those can come back to us as an action item at our next meeting. We have one additional major action item to address tonight. This is
one thing. Can we add American what is it? American what in ethnic studies, American cultures and ethnic studies to the number 2, because they have project-based learning, restorative justice, parent engagement, and implementation of social justice standards. But I think we should add that as well. the charges on charge number 2, it talks about identify, research, monitor, and obtain feedback from program leads regarding strategies for supporting engagement initiatives, project-based learning, restorative justice, parent engagement, and implementation of the social justice standards. And I just want to add American cultures and ethnic studies to that charge. So it's just an addition.
You know, they haven't discussed it. I mean, they've brought the charges to us. Well, we can add it to their charge. Sure.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. I didn't have the microphone on. We've moved to item 11B, which is an action item, major action item, in support of AB 39, AB 1308, and AB 428. There's a motion to approve that's been made by Oscar, seconded by Ralph. We'll move to a roll call vote. Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes, noting though that the paper, I hope that I already got out of it on my laptop, but the paper agenda doesn't match what you just read.
No, that's because, please.
Oh, because that was printed before. Okay, but so that's what's online. Got it. Just making sure. I know you said that with respect to a different item, I thought, but okay, great.
That was it.
I'm fine. Just wanting to make sure
we've.
That's
the
all
paper
I was.
copy, no, it's not there. Online, yes, it is.
Okay, yes, I vote yes. I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Foster?
I am a yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dilatorre. I'm a yes also, so that makes it unanimous. Colleagues, you'll see that we have a series of informational items there. We are going to be returning to closed session, but as we close our public meeting tonight, I'd like us to close, we'd all like to close, the entire board and staff, in the memory of Beth Lederpack. So I'm going to read a statement on behalf of this board. Tonight we will close our public meeting in memory of Beth Lederpack, a longtime Santa Monica resident and employee and a parent of a Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District graduate, Anna. The online tribute to her reads, and I quote, Beth was a galvanizing and dynamic force in social justice, political and community organizations, including Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Santa Monica Democratic Club, and as a founding member of Santa Monicans Allied for Responsible Tourism. She was at the forefront of the local living wage movement, a long-time affordable housing activist, and she advocated for the welfare of her co-workers as a union leader. For her exemplary record of civic leadership, Beth received the Communitas Award from the state of California in 2001. Ms. Lederpack's friends describe her as generous, honest, and forthright, a woman of action whose resume of activism speaks for itself, but who also showed her character through quiet acts like dropping off boxes of water for the high school choir trip long after her own daughter, Anna, had graduated. She had a passion for the performing arts, especially music and theater. As such, she was an avid supporter of our public schools choir and theater programs, having served on the theater steering committee at Samo High. On behalf of the entire school district, our thoughts are with her family, especially with Anna during this difficult time. And on that note, we'll make our way back to closed session.